UFC 21 took place on July 16th, 1999 at the Five Seasons Event Center in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Now, I thought this event was going to be trash, and I was wrong. We start with the cold open promoting the main event, Maurice Smith versus Marco Huas, plus Pat Miletich putting his belt on the line. We then get a short intro where it is time to get real. That's the new tagline. I feel so nostalgic for, opening up the gate and Bruce Beck somehow, but we then come up to the city of Cedar Rapids and into the arena. We are joined by our commentary team, Mike Goldberg and Jeff Blatnick, where they have a quick rundown of our main and semi-main event. We then go through the brand new rules of the Octagon, a more modern rule set that people will recognise here. We have the introduction of the 5-minute round system. Prelims go 2 rounds, main card 3 rounds, and title fights will go for 5-minute rounds like we see today. We also finally have the 10-point system. Now, this is a double-edged sword here because on the one hand, 10-point system's great, but we still have the same sort of criteria where it's not damage-based. It's still this striking, grappling, aggressiveness. They then try and sneak in control time at the bottom. And this just doesn't work. It has to be damage-based because it doesn't even need to be damage-based. There has to be one criteria. Because if we base it on 4 different things, and then, you then need to get even deeper into the weeds of a 10-8 round, it's impossible to get any consistency. And that's why we have robberies. That is literally why robberies happen. And robberies still happen now when it's damage-based. But Jesus Christ, imagine the robberies where you're judging based on 4 things. What gets priority over the other? Who the fuck even knows? But first up, we have Royce Agler returning after his loss at UFC 13 against Enson Inoue over 2 years ago. He's only had 3 fights since then, but he takes on Eugene Jackson, who we haven't seen yet. His last fight was a loss to Wanderlei Silva. His record is currently 9-3-1. Royce Agler currently 3-1. Royce is from the home state, and Jesus Christ, Eugene does not skip chest day. Bruce Buffer with the introductions. Big John is our referee, and we are underway. This time we have the clock counting down. This time, normally what you would recognise the UFC clock to do now, for the longest time it's been a timer counting upwards. Not that it's actually important, but it's just a thought. So we start the fight. Alger attempts a takedown, which is stuffed. He attempts the inside trip, which also fails. And Jackson is able to keep this on the feet. More failed takedown attempts from Royce. And this guy's a Division 1 NCAA champion. Silver medalist at World Championships. I am shocked at how much difficulty he has taking down Jackson. These two start just trading against the fence, and the crowd is up. And I have to say, the Iowa crowd, for the most part all night, pretty fucking good. Alger manages to take down Jackson finally into side control and then mount, landing ground and pound. And I thought this was going to be over because the crowd is going absolutely ballistic. Royce attempts a key lock, can't get it, attempts more ground and pound before Jackson is then able to get up from the bottom. We get a big left hand here from Jackson. It got a holy shit response from me. You could tell that Royce was stung by that. I don't even know if stung is the right word to describe it. It's as though it sent a shock through his entire body. He looked stunned for the next 40 seconds. And even coming out into the second round, he didn't even look nearly the same guy that we saw in the first few minutes of this fight. Into the second, and Alger attempts some more takedowns as his laces become untied. I don't know why we still allow shoes in the Octagon, but whatever. He can't keep Jackson down, back to the feet, and holy shit. Eugene Jackson shuts off Alger with a left hook. The crowd, I swear to God, the crowd is stunned, silent. I swear you could hear a pin drop in the arena, which is hilarious. This was pretty entertaining. I really enjoyed this fight. I can't get over this silence in the arena though. I swear, mouse pissing on cotton level silent. This killed them. The home state guy just getting, I mean, it was nearly flat. I say flatline. It wasn't a flatline. He came at him with a left hook and he folded. See, like Yuri Prohaska against Khalil Roundtree? It was that kind of knockout where he just get hit with a left hook and just face planted down. But he was still like conscious. He was just broken because as soon as he goes down, he starts like lightly tapping the mat like, please, no more. But Eugene Jackson, after the fight, has quite a nice interview where he gives credit to Tito. I'm presuming Ortiz is sitting at ringside and that's not somebody in his team. Or maybe Tito was in his fucking corner. I don't know. I didn't see him on the walkout. Maybe I'm just blind. But he gives credit to Tito for shouting left hook at him, resulting in the knockout. We will be seeing a lot more of Eugene Jackson as a result of this in the near future. But that's that fight. Hot start. Well, I say hot start. The crowd is down, but I am up. So we have that. Next up, we have TK against Tim Lasik. And thank God that they pronounce Tim Lasik's name, because just looking at how the fuck you spell this, I would have no idea whatsoever. But we start off with some TK propaganda where he has wins over Pete Williams and Chemo. He was beaten by Bash Rutten in like the last minute of their fight after winning the vast majority of the fight up to that point. TK's no joke. TK is decent. And we haven't seen Tim before, so we'll see what he's got for TK. I was actually quite impressed with him, I'm not going to lie. Just a spoiler. But Tim trying to find some range with the hands. TK lands a nice body kick and a low kick as we go to the ground. Tim on top of TK into the guard, and TK attempts the heel hook. Tim is able to escape, tries to land some ground and pound, and we are down in the corner of Tim Lasik. Good grief, these coaches. And I say these coaches, it's probably not even their fault. I say it's not their fault, right? Obviously they're going to give advice. But this is more production from UFC. They're down in Tim's corner, and they must have turned the mics up over there and turned commentary down and turned the crowd down. So all you can hear is Tim's coaches. But it's so fucking annoying. It's minutes on end. It must be 2 or 3 minutes, I'm not even joking, of the corner telling Tim what punch to throw next. What, like, Tim, just ground and pound, like, you've got control, you just do what you do, I'll lay out of this. No, his corner is giving him advice on every fucking punch to throw, as though he has no fucking idea what he is doing. TK is able to get back to the feet with seconds left, but Tim 100% easily won this round. Into the second, and it just kind of starts off scrappy. I don't know kind of what the stamina levels of these guys are at, but TK then goes for the takedown. Tim sprawls, ends up on top, and you think it's just going to be more of the same heading into the second. We're into the second round, but you think it's just going to be closed out here by Tim on top like it was in the first. Tim then attempts the heel hook, but no, TK attempts the heel hook, but Tim doesn't actually panic. He stays very composed, and this is why I was impressed with Tim, because we hadn't seen him before. You don't really know what to expect. TK's been in there with some pretty decent guys, and Tim really held his own here. He was able to get out of the hold. He was then into half guard, but sadly we're back into Tim's corner, and it's so fucking annoying because they do the thing with the mics where they turn everyone down and turn the corner up. And I get some people like hearing the corner advice. I do as well. When it's actual advice and not just chaotic screaming, it's not even advice. It's just, it's chaotic noise. It's so distracting. It is so annoying. And then you hear Maurice Smith in the other corner, who's so much more composed and actually sounds like he understands what he's talking about. Granted, he's been here and done it before, so he's probably more experienced in Tim's corner. But again, I don't know why it was infuriating, but Maurice Smith calmly in his corner giving advice to TK, not just yelling random fucking ground strikes to hit. TK is able to sweep and ends up on top, probably as a result of the good advice. He lands some good elbows which he had success against Bash Rutten with, those ground and pound elbows, particularly to the body. And during the break for the second round, Tim's corner throws in the towel and the fight's over. We didn't see it on camera, they didn't show it, but Jeff Blatnick says that Tim was having trouble standing in his corner, and so his team then threw the towel in. Another nice win for TK, but I don't know what the sort of injury here was. I'm presuming it was an injury, because I doubt the ground and pound elbows from TK really fucking crippled him that badly that he couldn't stand up. But that's just how it goes sometimes. Jeff Blatnick then teases an announcement for UFC 22. That's our next card. But we don't hear about it now. We will do later though, and it delivers. See, sometimes when they promise you an announcement and you're like, really, that was it? This one definitely delivers. So next up, we have Flavio Luis Moura and Paul Jones. Nearly 25 pounds difference. And we'll get to another fucking insult of a fight. We'll get to another large weight discrepancy later on because I have thoughts. But 25 pounds difference here and a 15-year age gap. I wonder who's going to win this. Mario Yamasaki is the referee and he says, let's go. Flavio starts the fight off by just dropping Jones straight away 6 seconds into the fight. Jones is still conscious. Flavio tries to take the back, but he's up way too high. Just kind of inexperienced, it just is what it is. But Jones is now on top after a scary start. Jones just tries to ground and pound in the guard. He doesn't even bother trying to pass. Very Lions Den of him, very Mark Coleman-esque. And as I say that, he actually then moves into side mount through circumstance more so than anything else. Flavio tries to escape. It just becomes more convenient for Jones to transition as opposed to actually working to pass the guard into half guard and then side control. Like, it ends up Flavio's just trying to escape from bottom and it becomes convenient for Jones to then rest in side control. But from there, Flavio then gives up the back and Jones puts in the rear naked choke on him. Flavio tries to stand up and Jones just wrenches that in and Flavio taps. Fight over. And after the first 6 seconds, I did not think that was how the fight was going to go. This was a nice win for Paul Jones. They kind of, not to say that they built Flavio up, but they said that he was training with Ebenezer Braga, who we seen at Ultimate Brazil, who was decent, by the way. We seen him in Pride as well. He's not bad. So you kind of, not that you expected more. He's fucking 21 years old. But, like, they built this in a way where Paul Jones winning, it made it seem like it was a nice win. And I can't believe it, but we're 3 for 3 on this card right now, which is shocking. None of these fights have been, say, all-time bangers, but all 3 definitely decent to good fights, which is more than I thought we were going to get. I made a preview video looking at this card saying, how shit does this look? Like, I never thought that we would get here, so consider me very surprised. But there's still time to fuck this up, don't worry about that. Halfway through the card, I can't believe this. I'm so shocked, but in a positive way. This is brilliant. I love this. Even you're pleasantly surprised. There hasn't even been anything to make fun of yet. What the fuck is going on? We have our announcement. September 24th, UFC 22, Frank Shamrock versus Tito Ortiz is announced. They have Bruce Buffer stand in the octagon with the light show on. They put together a promo package for this fight. This was great. Bruce Buffer narrated this hype package for the fight. This was fucking amazing. What is going on? Why has this event been so good? We are getting Tito Ortiz and Frank Shamrock, absolute banger at UFC 22. I'm really looking forward to this. We get the two in the octagon, and Frank Shamrock is back in UFC after we last seen him in Pride, at Pride 6, saying that the best competition is over in Pride and he wants to fight Sakuraba. But he's here in UFC fulfilling his championship duties. By the way, he said all that while champion. But he's taking on the Huntington Beach bad boy, Tito Ortiz. And Mike Goldberg calls him the Huntington Beach bad boy every single time. He never calls him Tito. He never calls him Tito Ortiz. It's always full name plus nickname. It's always in whatever order he wants. It's the Huntington Beach bad boy Tito Ortiz, or Tito Ortiz, the Huntington Beach bad boy. But these two exchange words. This was great. You can tell Frank Shamrock is more used to this. He's more experienced than Tito, but I tell you what, Huntington Beach bad boy Tito Ortiz holds it together and manages to actually speak English the entire time. I love this. This was great. This is something that you just don't see anymore, and we should be seeing it. Big matches, announce them on pay-per-view to the live crowd. It makes them feel so much bigger, like it's a spectacle. Like, I don't know why we don't see more of this modern day. I cannot wait for this fight, and it's on the next card too. That's tremendous. So not only that, we have Ken Shamrock cage side, and Jeff Blatnick says he's coming back to the octagon, which doesn't happen for another while yet, so I don't know if they're just in talks. We will get to this soon enough, because Shamrock will be in commentary at a point, but Blatnick, I think, maybe jumped the gun here and said that Ken Shamrock is coming back to the octagon. But let's just say Ken Shamrock is planning his MMA return, even though it won't happen for another wee while. Good grief, fucking hell. I will admit when I'm wrong. I jumped the gun on this event like Blatnick jumped the gun on the announcement. I thought this event was going to be trash. It has actually been really fucking good. The first half of this card, decent again, but throw on top of that fight announcement and that video package they put together for it, the planned return of Ken Shamrock. Obviously it won't happen for another while, but I was sitting watching this thinking, could you imagine watching this live in 1999? I would be so fucking gassed for this shit. I would be losing my mind sitting on the couch watching this. Next up, sadly though, see what I mean? I told you, we still have time to fuck this up. We have Takasi, who is either very tired, very drunk, or very high, or a combination of all three. I'm not kidding. It looks as though he doesn't know he has to take his shirt off after his entrance. It looks like he's having trouble walking. He looks really slow, really stiff, just walking from one side of the cage to the other. Don't tell me this guy is going to ruin this card, is what my notes says right here. Do not tell me this fucking guy is going to ruin the card. So, in a turn of events, we're actually cheering for Jeremy Horn here, which we haven't done since we met Jeremy Horn. To be fair to him, he has been up against Frank Shamrock and Chuck Liddell, two favourites of mine. But yeah, we want Horn to win here, seen as Takasi, you know. Well, that's the thing, he has turned up in condition, but it didn't look like it at the time. Last time we seen Takasi was at Pride 3 against Emmanuel Yarbrough, the sumo guy, where he just scarpered for 15 minutes. EY fell over, couldn't get back to his feet, and then tapped. So, you know, Yamasaki's a ref for this one, and all of a sudden, when he says let's go, Takasi somehow just gets revived. He comes back to life, doesn't look like a zombie anymore. Takasi puts Horn under some pressure, Horn lands some low kicks, goes for one up high, which hits the forearms, doesn't even partially land, but makes a loud crack noise, so it gets a reaction. We go to the ground, Horn sprawls, gets into side control, and this is where size comes into play. Takasi's 169 pounds. He should be fighting at lightweight. Horn is 198. He's a middleweight. What the fuck is going on? This is not fair whatsoever. Horn into side control, landing elbows into mount, just starts spamming hands, and gets the finish with 20 seconds left of the first round. Takasi looks like he's about to see God. By the way, Yamasaki stops the fight before it gets to that point. I swear, we should just have a mortician, fuck a doctor. For Yamasaki fights, let's have a mortician cage side. So, after the fight, Takasi can barely stand. And I'm in two minds about this because, first of all, late stoppage, for me personally. When you can sit and have a conversation with the referee about what elbows are legal and where you can hit your opponent and the opponent just isn't moving, call the fight, okay? 30-pound weight difference is tough. Horn even says after the fight he was just way too big for him. 30 pounds, when you get on top, it is so difficult for the lighter guy to get back up to the feet. This was not a bad fight by any means. But, like, what other outcome do you expect? Like, see, adjusting for modern day inflation, this is like a light heavyweight taking on a welterweight. What do you expect to happen? John Peretti joins us at the desk for this lightweight title fight. Pat Miletich versus Andre Pederneiras. good grief, we're just going to call him Andre. And you know the rules for Pat Miletich fights. 1.5 speed. That is the fastest the Fight Pass allows. I've given this guy enough chances. I'm sick of it. Mike Goldberg on commentary has to say now, remember folks, Pat Miletich has promised he will throw punches. Think about that. The commentator has promised fight fans here, the champion has promised he's going to throw punches. I don't know if people think I'm exaggerating when I do these reviews. I'm genuinely just recounting what is happening. Miletich, the hometown fighter, gets a positive response in the half-empty building. I'll stop, okay? Bruce does the intros, Miletich gets another ovation, and then the fight starts. Conveniently, the clock is left off the screen as the two make no contact in the opening stages. Andre lands a single low kick, Miletich gets to his favourite position, a clinch against the fence, and knees to the body, trademark Miletich right there, clinch against the fence, knees to the body. They trade dominant position, par for the course for a Miletich fight. This is going as you would expect. And finally, over a minute into the fight, the clock finally decides to turn up. Miletich rushes Andre, pushes him against the cage, into the clinch, lands some hands off the break. See, folks, he did throw punches. He kept his promise. The two exchange low kicks, Pat feints and then presses Andre against the fence again as the round ends. And John Peretti, our matchmaker, on commentary says, Pat is so methodical. Methodical. People don't have the patience for him. Or in other words, he's very slow and very boring. Okay? Into the second, and Andre is cut. He threw a low kick. And when Andre threw low, Pat landed a right hand which cut Andre just above the eye, and blood is just gushing out his head. It is running all the way down his chest, like down to his shorts. It's bleeding all over the place, leaking very badly. The fight then goes to the ground and is stopped when Big John wants the doctor to look at the cut on Andre's head. And then when he does, the fight is then stopped and Miletich wins. Oh, this was kind of a nothing fight. I'm not going to be too harsh on this one, to be honest with you. I'm not going to be too harsh on it. Kind of a nothing fight. The crowd 100% helped this because they were loud. But the fight itself was whatever. See, if you watched it on mute and didn't have the crowd noise sort of amplifying everything that was going on, for every strike they were up because they like Miletich, the people that decided to turn up. Like, they were willing Miletich to put in a good performance and win here, and he put on, you know, trademark Miletich, I suppose. But whenever a fight ends via cut, it just feels anticlimactic. And that's not either of these fighters' fault. I'm not blaming Miletich or Andre, even though Andre looked fucking out his depth here. I don't know what was happening with him. This was a fine win for Miletich, who has an interview after the fight where he receives a medal from the SCG president Bob Marowitz for his successes. He has a nice interview where he says he put on a show for all the people in Iowa who came out to see him, and effectively not for the haters online. Damn, Miletich is rattled by the hate. I wonder what 1999 trolling looked like. Like, was it people just spamming his AOL, some sort of MMA message boards in 1999 that he's on? What the fuck? I didn't realise that this had got him that bad. I know that the commentators had brought up here, you know, a lot of people saying you're boring. I didn't realise that he was actually seeking it out. I love that. We then see Mikey Burnett, who they call Mikey Brunette. And I do not need to see this fight again, nor does anybody else. Mikey cuts a heel promo like a WWE wrestler, calls the Iowa fans Nimrods who watch all the Gableisms, whatever the fuck that means. I'm presuming he just means boring wrestling. You know? Mikey is talking shit and nothing ever comes of it, because he will never get the title match against Pat Miletich that they're halfway promoting without confirming, because he will never fight again. He will be taking a hiatus that will last 7 years. He will then be on season 4 of The Ultimate Fighter. He will get injured. He won't be able to get the surgery. He would open a gym in 2011. He would get shot in 2016. The juvenile suspect would get 35 years in jail and therefore be released around 2051, probably, according to Wikipedia, which had no citation. So take all that with a pinch of salt, but that's, the next few years of Mikey Brunette's life. Ken Shamrock is on the desk. They ask about Tito Ortiz. He says that Tito crossed the line after the whole Guy Mesger deal, the t-shirt. Ken understands promotion and what it is. He doesn't get too flustered about what people say, but thinks that Tito crossed the line. And I would have loved it if we could have gotten this fight sooner than we did. We have to wait until UFC 40 to get this matchup between Ken Shamrock and Tito Ortiz. I wish we could have gotten it sooner, but, that's just how it goes sometimes. He then talks about how Burnett should have had the fight against Miletich tonight. There was a rumour Burnett might have had a broken hand. Maybe that's why he didn't get the fight. Shamrock kills that straight away is not true. Basically kind of accuses, Miletich of ducking. But then again, it doesn't matter. We don't get the fight. And I don't know anybody clamouring for it either, so fuck it. Next up, we get the promo package from Maurice Smith, winning the title, losing the title, then the title being vacated, his long break, his loss to Randleman in the heavyweight title tournament, and we'll get to the heavyweight title in a little while. Ken Shamrock then talks about Maurice. He calls him the best stand-up fighter in the world. And again, I'm trying to run through the mental Rolodex right now. I can't even dispute it, but I think what's his name? Fucking Vitor Belfort, I think, would beat him, but that's neither here nor there. He then questions the mentality of both Maurice and Marcos. They're both kind of suffering right now from losses. How will each of them bounce back? Whilst they're both sort of going through the struggles at this point in their career. Ken Shamrock is then asked about his time in WWF. He's spoken to WWF, who have agreed to let him fight in what Ken calls no holds barred instead of MMA. Jeff Blatnick won't like that. But Ken says that he has unfinished business in the game and wants to return. I don't know if it's just nostalgia, because Ken Shamrock had a lot of stinkers, but I'm a wrestling guy and I like Shamrock, so I don't know if that's kind of bias. But I wanted to see him back, and a part of the problem with Shamrock's fights was that they would just go on forever. Fucking Hoist Gracie, Dan Severn, Oleg Tiktarov. It would just be endless. But now with the new rules, 5-minute rounds, I would like to see him back. It's just a shame that we need to wait so long for it to happen. We then get Marco Huas, propaganda, King of the Streets, UFC 7 tournament win. And I miss the tournaments, man, I tell you, I miss the tournaments. I am looking forward to the Pride tournaments when we finally, get past the dreck that we have to watch now. He says that he's still as good as he was back then as he is now. It's now 3.5 years later, and we've watched Huas fight twice in Pride. We've reviewed both fights on the channel. He beat Gary Goodridge after Goodridge injured himself, and then, lost in what was an upset to Alexander Otsuka, but he looked really tired and really slow, and they blamed his medication, but I don't know. Shamrock says this will be down to mental toughness as to who wins the fight. Huas comes out. I like his shirt here, this Huas Vale Tudo number he's got. But he's 38 years old, and Mike Goldberg floats the idea of maybe we'll see a new division for some of the heroes of the sport like this. And I love that idea. The Unk division. I just think that'd be so good. But it has to be high caliber fighters. It can't just be old guys like Ron Van Cleef. Shout out if you remember that review. I think that was UFC 2. But if we had a division of unks who have a name in the sport, like these two, 38 and 37, Smith and Huas, both still in good shape, so we'll see how this one goes. Maurice lands a low kick and then tries to throw a second, gets taken down by Huas. Who would have thought that? But Huas just sort of stuffs Smith against the cage, doesn't even bother trying to strike, he just holds him there. Cannot believe Big John didn't stand this up. Maurice is able to get to a knee, but is then sat back down by Marco, who's into half guard, and again, no attempts to strike. What the fuck is happening? Marco attempts a heel hook, but Maurice is able to escape. Smith lands a strike, and then it's his turn to take the last 30 seconds of the round to just sort of sit there on top and get control time. So at the end of the first round, they go to the corners. Frank Shamrock says no more low kicks, he's just going to take you down. And Huas, it pans over to his corner, he's just sitting down. And you can hear his cornerman, or it's just some fucking guy in jeans and a polo shirt, in English, shouting at him, Marco, like just screaming at him, get up, Marco, over and over again. Like, Marco, you're a man. Fight for your family. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, mate? What the actual fuck are you talking about? The corner is screaming, "Who-ass, don't fucking quit." Anyway, the towel gets thrown in. And the fight is over after one round of no action, and the people evacuate the building as though it's a fire drill. Maurice Smith is asked in his post-fight interview just sort of about the planned fights. They don't even ask him anything because nothing happened, so they can't ask him about the fight. So they just start asking him about other people's fights. Miletich and Burnett, that won't happen, who gives a shit? And then Frank and Tito answers just as you would expect, a bit of interview bingo. But he does drop one nugget of information, that Bash Rutten is moving to middleweight. So the heavyweight title again will be vacated after all that bullshit with the road to the heavyweight title, where Hizzle beats Coleman, then we just forget that happened because Bass also beat TK, and Hizzle and Bass won't fight each other. So why are they in the same tournament? Randleman then grapples Smith to death in that fight, and then the controversial decision between Bass and Randleman. All of that horror, all of that nonsense, just for Bass to then move down to middleweight, which was his natural weight class, by the way. Why was he fighting at heavyweight? But Bass, all of that for Bass to move down to middleweight and vacate the belt. This belt is absolutely cursed. And Bash Rutten must also be cursed, because he's training to move down to middleweight, injures just about everything you could possibly injure, and has to retire. For fuck's sake. We then hear from Marco Huas, who says he was already injured coming into the fight, but he'd agreed to take the fight, so he wanted to turn up. Oh my god, what a mess. What a mess. He turned up injured, still took the fight, and then got injured during the fight and had to call the fight off. Just... we're already 2 hours and 15 minutes into this thing. It was going so well. We're 2 hours and 15 minutes into this thing, so instead of just calling it there, we've had a good night, right? As a whole, the card's been pretty good. So instead of just closing here, we now have to watch a prelim fight that they're still calling alternate fights, which doesn't make any sense because they aren't alternating for anyone, because we don't do tournaments anymore. But the event's over. Let's not waste time on this bullshit. You know what I mean? Let's just close on that. Sorry, shame about the main event, guys, but we'll see you all next time. Ron Waterman is here. He was in the prelim fight, who we seen squash a fake Tank Abbott jabroni. He's back to take on another blob in Andre Roberts, who we seen get hit once by Gary Goodridge and then run away and quit. Genuinely, that's what happened. You can watch the review. Andre Roberts somehow beats Ron Waterman by, I say TKO, I think it was KO, to be honest. Waterman dominates early exchanges, putting a beating on Andre, who they have to check a cut on. About a minute in, he's just beating the fuck out of him. He then comes back out after the restart, gets beat up even more because he's terrible, and then lands a Hail Mary, and then fails to close out the fight. When the fight gets back to the feet, he lands another Hail Mary and KOs Waterman. Somehow. What the fuck? How the... And you might be saying this like, really, this is like a fun scrap, this is a good main event, this is fucking pointless. Like, and just for the sake of 100% in this thing, Travis Fulton, who we seen on UFC 20 losing to Pete Williams, takes on David Dodd and beats him via decision. And just a side note on Travis Fulton, he's no longer with us after he sent his own self to Mordor whilst in custody, where he had kiddie stuff going on. And I don't know how much YouTube allows me to say things on this kind of thing particularly. They don't like certain words. But let's say Travis was allegedly a big fan of the kids, and whilst in jail he was found hanging with some sort of implement, some sort of device. Lynn County Sheriff Department said that it was friendly fire. And on that note... UFC 21 Return of the Champions has been brought to a close. Decent card, not counting the prelims, okay? I would say 4, 5 of these fights out of the 6 delivered. The main event actually let the card down. And I thought it was going to be the best fight. Shows you what I know. And I'm going to say 5 of the 6 delivered because you know what? Miletich promised punches and he technically did win via cut, which was from the straight right hand. So you know what? I'll give Miletich the credit there. 5 out of 6 fights delivered. Even though the Miletich fight had an anticlimactic finish, it wasn't really his fault. So it probably was his best performance, to be fair. And at least it was quick, which is better than what we've been subject to previously. Takasi versus Horn, the weight difference, way too much. Way too much. And I thought we were supposed to have weight classes now. See if this guy turns up and say this is a middleweight fight and he turns up 30 pounds under, get a fucking alternate, please. Way too big a difference. So that fight was only ever going to go one way. Everything else on this card was good. I'm not including the alternate fights here. Roberts versus Waterman. Yeah, okay, you might say good scrap, whatever. I can't believe it frustrates me they put that on last as the main event. Just close after Smith and Huas. Injuries happen. We don't need to see anything else, especially when the marketable one, Waterman, is the guy getting slimed out. Just keep that under wraps. Why share that? We don't need to see it. Everything else on this card really good. Shout out to Shamrock and Tito. That segment with the video package and the war of words, so to speak, was the highlight of the show to me. And if everything was as good as the first half of this card, we would really be on to something. But next up, UFC 22, we get that fight, Frank Shamrock versus Tito Ortiz. Really looking forward to that one, so join me there. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notify bell to know when that video drops. Comment on thoughts below, like the video, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye. UFC 22 title There Can Only Be One Champion took place at the Lake Charles Civic Centre in Lake Charles, Louisiana. Cold open, hyping up the main event, Frank Shamrock and Tito Ortiz. They focused mostly on the interaction at UFC 21. I thought they could have done something with the fact that Tito beat the Lions Den guys, Frank's old teammates. He has beef with Ken Shamrock, Frank's brother. I thought they could have done more with this video, but it was fine. It was whatever. It needed Invincible playing over the top of it. I am so hyped up for this fight. But we come up to the city of Lake Charles. Mike Goldberg says it's known for its peace and tranquility. I'll let the Lake Charles natives decide that. We meet our commentary team, Mike Goldberg and Jeff Blatnick. They tell us that these two are the best fighters under 200 pounds. And I don't think anyone would argue with that at this time. Some people might throw in Sakuraba in there. I mean, only if they're watching Pride, which, again, 1999 are they? I don't know, maybe. But I think these two are the best. Mike Goldberg tells us that Frank got married and took most of the year off, and as a result, 1999 has belonged to Tito Ortiz. Jeff Blatnick is expecting a war. We'll just need to see what happens. He might be right. We see our rules, we see our judges, we get ourselves underway with the first fight of the night, Tim Lasik versus Ron Waterman. Now, I would be so much more excited for this fight if we didn't just see Ron Waterman get slimed out at the end of UFC 21, which was in a prelim fight, and we showed it after the main event. We absolutely didn't need to do it. We done it anyway. But now, both of these guys are coming off of losses where they actually looked half decent before getting beat. In Tim's case, getting beat meant he quit on the stool after round 2. In Ron's case, getting beat meant getting slimed out. Bruce does the intros, Big John is our referee, and we are underway. Ron gets the double leg takedown into half guard, then side control. And last time out, Ron tried to throw hands. Absolutely none of that here. Tim gives up the back and Ron has no idea what he's doing. Ron literally has back mount. He get handed back mount, does nothing with it, just lets Tim up, and Ron has him body locked against the cage. And here we see Tank Abbott cage side. We have not seen him in a while, but you know, he's here, must be here to support his old friend Tito Ortiz, of course. Not in the corner though, after the fallout. I wonder what happened there. But absolutely no damage done in this round, hence why we're talking about Tank Abbott sitting at the side of the cage, absolutely no damage done in the first round. And seeing their last fights, I actually had high hopes. I thought we were going to get a first round finish here. But after their last fights, both guys started off looking really good. Neither guy looked good here. And the crowd boos at the end of the round. Sometimes I don't know if people think I'm exaggerating when I talk about these rounds, or how boring something is, or how good something is. The crowd reaction is sort of the general sentiment that I'm portraying in these videos as well. Me and the crowd are one and the same. But Ron apparently at the end of the round landed a low shot, which didn't look low to me. But, I'm only seeing one angle of it. They didn't bother showing a replay, which tells me I don't think it was that low. Tim didn't even react. So how low did he feel it? And that got called as a foul. But they didn't make a big deal of it. They didn't walk round, tell the judges here, 1 point there, 1 point, 1 point. No, none of it. So does the point get deducted or not? We'll need to wait and see. So into the second, Ron probably won that based on control time, but no fucking damage done. He was in charge of the action. But again, nothing major happening into the second. And I'm noticing now, I only noticed it into the second round, Ron keeps crossing his feet when he moves, and now that I've seen it, it's all that I can focus on, and it's really, really annoying. Ron attempts a single leg and Tim sprawls, and now Tim is on top in the guard, but Ron's able to get up after about a minute, but Tim's able to land some damage. Ron's eye is now swollen up. We then get some really clunky stand-up. Ron shooting in but can't get any takedowns. In the second round, it was worst case for Tim. He's only stuffing the takedown. Best case, he's actually able to land on the break. But Ron then shoots with a minute left and gets sprawled on. Now Tim is on top in the guard, and we end the round, both guys looking unbelievably tired after only 2 rounds. And we come out for the third. Tim probably took that second round. I say probably. He definitely took that second round. The first probably goes to Waterman for control. Literally no damage was done, but with a foul, maybe, we don't know. There might be a point deduction. We'll just need to wait and see. Into the third, Ron Waterman gets the takedown, stays in the guard for just about the whole round. And the crowd... See, sometimes this used to happen with the old fights where I think it was a Shamrock Severn fight where the crowd's almost just beaten into a submission where they don't even have the energy to boo. It's like a half-hearted, it's like a groan from the crowd towards the end. And they are just dead silent when the horn goes to end the fight. So we went over this. Round 2 for Tim. Round 3, that was for Ron. Again, he landed more here than he did in the first, but it's nothing's fucking happening. Round 1 is going to decide this fight, and Bruce Buffer tells us that due to the foul in the first round, this fight has been declared a draw and the crowd boos. Obviously, because this fight was not good and there was no winner. So you feel as though you've just wasted 15 minutes of your time watching this shit fight and nobody even won anything out of it. Nobody gained anything. Because both these guys are coming off a loss. Now a draw. Not ideal. But next up, we have John Lewis versus Lowell Anderson. I've got nothing on these guys, folks. Absolutely nothing. But you already know what it is. 2 lightweights, Pat Miletich on commentary. This is the shit break. 40 minutes into this 2-hour card, and we've had one fight. We've had one fight that wasn't particularly good. Now we get lightweights, which is already visual poison in 1999. And now we've got Pat Miletich on commentary, whose mic is thankfully muted, or at least turned all the way down. We cannot hear him. God answered my prayers for about a minute and a half before he then enters the chat. And now we have the audio poison as well. I feel as though I go too hard on Miletich. His fights are boring, just putting it out there. But, he's fine on commentary, whatever. He's got experience. He at least knows what he's talking about. He was a good coach. I've never not said that he's a good coach. I just find his fights to be dull. These two start off fast and active without actually doing anything. They're throwing a lot, not a great deal's landing, but Pat's mic is muted when he's talking, so you just hear the sort of restless crowd who've already had to sit through that poor first fight and now into the second, where sure these guys are moving quick, but not a great deal is actually happening. Lewis, I've wrote here, has pretty fast hands. He nearly drops low. They try to call it a knockdown. It is a knockdown technically, I suppose, but like, is it? So after a couple of minutes, he drops his hands on the floor. Like, he doesn't get knocked back and knocked down properly. He like gets pushed back, hands on the floor, that kind of way. And he just lets him back up. He doesn't actually pressure him. And we just get the two back to centre, just feinting at range. Both open, nobody really throwing anything, and that's it for the first round. Lewis takes the round, but there wasn't too much going on. No combinations, just single big strikes. Lewis has the better stand-up, so it's his round. I get like a dull opening 50 minutes to the card. Into the second, and Lowe wants to get this to the ground, but Lewis, who I think may be juicing, just putting that out there, think he may be juicing, maybe dipping into the Coleman, Randleman, Kerr bag of tricks. He doesn't train at the Hammer House, but it's all the same stuff. Just a hunch that I have. Lewis has Lowell body locked against the cage, and Lowell's able to pull guard, and we stay here until the end of the round, the crowd becoming even more restless. And then they pan to the very unenthusiastic crowd. Lewis again takes a second, but we get to the third round. Lewis is up 2-0 at this point. Lowell really needs a finish, and that's the thing, he was already losing that second round and then decided to fucking pull guard. Like, you're already down and now you're willingly putting yourself on bottom. I just don't understand the thought process sometimes. But that's just me. What do I know? Into the third, Lewis is up 2-0. Lowell needs the finish. So he just charges it, John. He just charges across. I'm not joking. John McCarthy says, let's get it on for round 3. Lowell charges across, and Lewis just grabs him in the clinch, spams knees on him. Vanderlei Silva style, just spams knees on him. Off the break, lands a roundhouse kick. Lowell's stumbling towards the fence, looks as though he's on his way to be finished. Lewis then charges over to Lowell, who's got his back turned to him, he's fucked. In the corner, throws the towel in, and it's done within 10 seconds into the third round. John Lewis wins. Nothing really more to say. It was like 13 seconds of action in the third round, and everything else was just kind of dull. But again, nothing more to say than that. Looked like Lewis was on another level to Lowell, and it might just be actually the height as well, because Lewis seemed to be much bigger than Lowell. And sometimes these fights result in like one-sided domination and a brutal KO. It was like Lewis knew that he was better, so he just took it easy, stayed composed, waited for his chance to finish when it came. And instead of like seeking it out, you know, looking for the finish off his own back, he just waited for it to come to him, which it eventually did at the start of the third round. A nice win. Good for Lewis. Next up, we get Jeremy Horn, who's moving up to heavyweight. He's up against Jason Godsey. We've seen Godsey lose to Pete Williams at UFC 19, and we've seen Jeremy Horn take Frank Shamrock to his absolute limit at middleweight. He came up just short into, I think it was the second overtime. I think he made it past the first overtime. Don't quote me on that. I think it was in the second overtime, but he took him all the way to the end. He then lost to Ebenezer Braga. After that, he got subbed in a few minutes. And then he beat Chuck Liddell. He submitted him from bottom. And then with a 30-pound weight advantage, he then beat Takase at our last UFC event, UFC 21. But they had some promo for Horn before the fight, so they see a bright future for him. And commentary always speaks highly of him. But then again, he's training with Pat Miletich, and they love Pat Miletich. You know how it goes. Godsey's able to push Horn back against the fence and eventually get the double leg takedown. After about a minute in the guard, we see Horn submit fucking Godsey from bottom. That's how it goes. After 2 minutes, just like Horn did to Chuck, Horn submitted Chuck from the bottom, and he does the same to Godsey here, this time with an armbar. Another win for Jeremy Horn. He started off in UFC 0-2. And I actually think Ebenezer Braga's pretty good, but I lost to Frank Shamrock isn't bad, and he put in a really good performance against him. Or not an he didn't put in an entertaining performance, he put in a good performance. And he lost to Ebenezer Braga. That one was a tough loss because he didn't really get going in that. But now he's 3-2. And he's beat Chuck Liddell, he's beat Godsey, who, okay, I get it, isn't really a big name. And they handed him to Cassie for the win. But look, he's 3-2. You can only beat who's in front of you. And he's got a bit of momentum now, so we'll see where it goes for him. Next up, Chuck Liddell, who is now called the Iceman for the first time at UFC 22. You'll remember that Maurice Smith was getting called the Iceman for the longest time. Even when Chuck Liddell and Maurice Smith were on the same card, they were still calling Maurice Smith the Iceman. But order has been restored, balance is back in the universe. Chuck, the Iceman Liddell, is here. And apparently his head tattoo means a place of peace and prosperity. I don't know if Chuck's verified that, but that's what Goldberg told me, so I'm just going to go with it. I'm going to trust him this time. Paul Jones is out here, and we've seen him beat Flavio Luis Moura with a rear naked choke at UFC 21. John Peretti, the matchmaker's on commentary for this as well. Jones tries to take down Chuck, but come on now. Come on. They don't know it yet, but we know who has the GOAT takedown defence. You ain't taking the Iceman down, buddy. Ain't happening. Jones is persistent trying to take down Chuck because he just doesn't know yet. He just doesn't know. He obviously can't get it and now looks really tired. Off the break, Chuck is able to land some nice hands. Nothing too crazy, but still some damage. Jones just about manages to duck under this right hand from Liddell, and he keeps trying to grab his ankle for the ankle pick. Still can't take down the Iceman. Nobody's taking this guy down. Chuck stands up, lands an elbow, which I think is what causes the cut on the eyebrow of Jones, as he goes for then another ankle pick. Chuck just about missed a high kick. He then goes for the ankle pick, but as he's shooting in, Big John stops the fight to check on the cut, and Chuck prematurely does his celebration. You know the one, it's like he done like a diet version of the one that you know, and then he actually does win, and then he does the proper version of it now that he's won. Nice win for Chuck. GOAT takedown defense. It probably wouldn't shock you to know I love the Chuck Liddell archetype of fighter. Just given there's now a big catalogue of these reviews, you can probably tell what fights I do like and what fights I don't like. But the actual archetype of fighter Chuck Liddell is top level takedown defense, good kickboxing. Alex Pereira is currently my favourite fighter, and if I was watching in 1999, Chuck Liddell would have been my favourite fighter. I just love that kind of style. Mike Goldberg tells us that Chuck has been training with Tito Ortiz at Team Punishment, which is, I mean, good lord, what a name for a gym. And what a combo, Chuck and Tito. I only ever think of them as opponents, never as actual training partners, but I suppose that is part of the rivalry. And Dana White is the manager of both guys as well, by the way, in case you didn't know. Next up, we have Bob Marowitz announcing that the next card will take place in Japan for UFC 23. That's right, not a 0.5 card, but UFC Ultimate Japan UFC 23 will be there at the end of the year. We now see one of the prelim fights. It was the second one of the night. The other two featured Jens Pulver, UFC Hall of Famer, who drew with Alfonso Alcaraz, whoever that is. And then Matt Hughes beat Valery Ignatov by decision, but it was a 3-round decision, which means it should have been main card, but it wasn't, so I didn't review it. But the fight on the screen now, Brad Kohler, formerly of the Hammer House, with the boys, Coleman, Kerr, Randleman, which sounds like it would be a great time. Now he's training with Miletich in his gym, which sounds significantly less fun. We've seen Kohler lose to Trey Teligman at the first Ultimate Japan event nearly 2 years ago, but he's back now to pick up the win in about 30 seconds. Kohler looks like a baked potato with arms and legs, but good lord, he has hands too, and knocked Steve the fuck out. Kohler fakes the takedown, lands the right cross, and just about kills Steve Judson, who apparently had trouble breathing, needed oxygen, and then gets stretchered out, taken to the hospital, but he's okay. He made a recovery. I don't know about a full recovery, but a recovery nonetheless. What more do you want, you know? Next up, we get the trailer before the movie. Frank Shamrock beating Kevin Jackson, Igor Zinoviev, Jeremy Horn, and then John Lober. He's 4-0 in UFC, looking to make it 5-0. Next up, the Huntington Beach bad boy Tito Ortiz, or Tito Ortiz, according to the narrator. I'm not joking. Nobody told the narrator how to pronounce Tito Ortiz's name. He calls him Ortiz the entire time. Multiple times. Over and over again. It's like someone rage baiting the audience. But besides the pronunciation of Tito Ortiz's name, this was great propaganda. I loved it. I loved the Frank Shamrock one. I loved the Tito Ortiz one. This genuinely has a big fight feel to it. Like, I can't remember a main event that had this sort of like feeling going into it, like real genuine super fight. We've had title fights in the main event, you know, Bash Rutten debuting and stuff. Like, it hasn't had this kind of feeling going into it. There's obviously been big fights, but this is a real main event with some proper heat to it. Tito walks out barefoot to the octagon for the first time. Frank walks out with his wife, Maurice Smith, and TK, which is quite the team. TK and Maurice Smith, obviously of the Alliance, Frank Shamrock's new gym. I say new gym, he's been there since Maurice Smith's been here, so it's been a couple of years now. But yeah, his wife actually walks out with him, which they wouldn't allow that today. I don't think. Dana just likes it to be the team, but you know, that's nice moment for the newly married couple, whatever. Bruce Buffer with the introductions. The crowd has a mixed response for both. You know, people at this point in time definitely have picked their favourite. There's a mixed reaction for Tito. There's then a mixed reaction for Shamrock. It starts off mixed for Shamrock and then turns into majority cheers. I don't know if people were just tired booing, but it started mixed, ended a little bit more positively. But look, it's time. Let's get it on. I'm excited for this one. Shamrock low kicks. Tito catches. Shamrock falls over. Tito doesn't pursue Shamrock when he's already on the ground. He gets him to stand back up. And he just didn't want to jump into the guard while Shamrock was on the ground, because he gets the body lock on Shamrock and then takes him down on his own terms. Shamrock tries more low kicks, and Tito's doing a really good job of blocking the low kicks, or at least that's what you think. They're not hitting with full impact, but they are still connecting. He goes for the takedown, he being Tito, and Tito's in the guard now over by the fence. Shamrock tries to throw up a triangle, doesn't get it. He's now got a closed guard though, almost manages to get up, but Tito's able to hold Frank down, land some sporadic ground and pound as Shamrock is able to work his way back up to the feet before then being taken down again by Tito Ortiz to close out the round on top in the guard as the crowd goes ballistic. By the way, see everything that I've told you? That's all that happened in that round. It wasn't really crazy, fast-paced, all-action round. The crowd are still going ballistic because of who these guys are. They are so invested in this. They are loving this. 10-9 to Tito Ortiz after the first round. We then start the second with Shamrock landing another low kick. He's heavy on the kicks in this fight. He throws one high. He throws to the body as well. But Shamrock throwing low allows Tito to then take him down. He's into the guard, and even though, again, nothing's happening, what I've said to you is what happened. Shamrock's throwing a few kicks. Tito just, bang, takes him down. The crowd is still loud. And they're still reacting, even though nothing's really happening. The goodwill, though, that reaction, does start to burn out a little bit towards the end of the round. I wouldn't say they get restless, but it is kind of like, here, okay, buddy, we know you can take him down. We know you can stay in the guard. Fancy getting up. But Tito ends the round in the guard after another takedown because Shamrock did get back to his feet. Tito then just took him down again. Another 10-9 round for Tito. Into the third, and again Frank with the kicks low and to the body. He lands a knee in the clinch before Tito then takes us to the ground again into side control, and Tito lands a pretty nasty right hand, which would have been bad enough, but they're like right next to the mic at the side of the octagon, so you hear like the proper thud of the strike. It just makes it sound so much more devastating. And now into the third, the crowd have dueling chants for Shamrock and Tito. It's just creating so much noise, and the atmosphere is just electric for this fight. The crowd is still into this. Even though it's been a lot of sitting in guard, they are still so into this. Tito is riding Shamrock, landing some knees from backside, and Shamrock is able to escape. Frank lands the low kick as Tito lands a jab. Frank returns with a cross. They exchange knees to the body in the clinch. Frank lands an uppercut and another. Goes for the right hook, narrowly misses. The crowd is standing, jumping, clapping, everything. They are so into this. Frank goes for the low kick. Tito gets the takedown. We're back into guard. Frank has a small cut on his head, which is now rubbed off into Tito's hair, which is now turning red. We end the round, and this one is kind of too close to call. It could go either way. The uppercut sequence from Shamrock was the biggest moment of the round, but Tito had more control, and he landed some decent shit of his own. Heading into the fourth round, Frank could need a finish in these last two rounds. We start the fourth, and Frank again persistent with the kicks to the leg and to the body, which has slowed Tito down. You're now starting to see those investment shots now coming back. He's starting to land more to the legs, and he's able to close the distance, and now he's landing more with his hands. Inside and outside leg kicks leads to Tito now being able to get the takedown, but it's like you can now see the fatigue in the takedown. He looks more tired, he's more drained, he's still able to get the takedown, but he is definitely feeling the effects of the body shots and the low kicks. And whilst he's been on top in the guard, Frank has still been active from bottom. He's making Tito really work for points on the ground, so it's not as though Tito's on top in the guard and now he's like resting. He's not taking it easy in the guard. Frank lands an elbow. Tito tries for an elbow, misses all of them. Misses absolutely all of them. Frank is able to then reverse and get back up to the feet. He unloads just about everything onto Tito, bash routing style in the last minute against TK, that kind of shit. He is unloading punches, knees, everything, you name it, he's throwing it. Tito shoots, gets the takedown, but Frank catches him in the front face lock. He gets the gilly. Tito manages to just about get out, but he is so gassed he can't get up. Frank lands an elbow and a hammer fist and another and another, and Tito Ortiz taps out with 14 seconds left in the fourth round, and still the UFC middleweight champion Frank Shamrock. Good God almighty, what a round. What a fight. Just how Tito Ortiz done Guy Mezger with the elbows, Tito Ortiz suffers the same fate. He was done after the elbow. Frank landed more hammer fists after the fact, just before Tito taps. The crowd goes bananas. There are literally people in the crowd jumping up and down out of their seat. They are so happy. Oh wow. That feeling right there, unbelievable. UFC 21, after that main event, and it was when I seen the people in the crowd jumping up and down, I thought about the UFC 21 main event, where as soon as it was over, the crowd evacuated as though there was a fire drill. And now everyone in the arena is still here. They are on their feet clapping, just amazing. This was amazing. Sure, there was a lot of guard, and I've critiqued that in other fights before, but the crowd helped this massively to help it keep the energy. The beef the star power, the build to the fight itself delivered. I can't even speak, just reliving it right now. This was incredible. How is this fight not in the Hall of Fame? Tito Ortiz has the Frank Shamrock shirt on. This time it's a respectful gesture and not Guy Mesger is my bitch or Gay Mesger or whatever that fucking other one is. What was it? Extreme Associates 316 says I just fucked your ass. It's none of that. It's a respectful gesture this time. Frank Shamrock here cements himself as the GOAT of the sport, I think, with this performance. I don't know who's better. 5-0 in UFC, been a champion since his debut. He's won with arm locks, leg locks, slams. Tonight he gets the TKO. And I know that it was a tap out, but it was a tap out 2 punches. If he didn't tap, he was about to get knocked out. The only top guy we haven't seen him fight is Sakuraba. Or maybe a Bash Rutten at middleweight, in the octagon at least. I know they fought in Pancrase, but Bass is now retired, so we can't get that fight. Like right now, Frank Shamrock is the best in the game. Vitor lost to Sakuraba, so that fight's off the table. We don't need to see that. But this was an amazing performance from Shamrock. So what better time to retire? Frank Shamrock says that that's it. That's the career. Who else is there to beat? And at this point, he's kind of right. He's levels above everybody else. And he has a nice speech after the fight. And I'm just sad we don't get to see more of Frank Shamrock. Really good. His fights always deliver. And he would actually retire after this fight for only about a year. And then he would fight sporadic. Like, it's kind of a real retirement because it's not a real retirement. What am I talking about? His activity levels dip. He fights sporadically up until the late 2000s, like mostly in Strikeforce. But this is it for prime Frank Shamrock. An absolute all-timer, a real pioneer of the sport. I'm sure he'll be in the Hall of Fame soon enough. But when is soon enough going to be? How is this guy not in the Hall of Fame yet? Seriously. But that brings UFC 22 to a close. Kind of a one-fight card. I mean, the card's built off of one fight. But I mean, what a fight. Fucking voices in the air, hear them loud and clear. See when the anticipation meets the crowd, meets the fighters, and the fight actually delivers, and you get all of that in one. Just terrific. Frank and Tito, absolute barn burner, Hall of Fame fight, real main event. Absolutely great. Chuck Liddell, good performance. Jeremy Horn got a nice win. Nice knockout for Brad Kohler. And nice win for John Lewis. Even though I wasn't thrilled with that fight. And speaking of not being thrilled, Waterman and Lasik hardly set the world on fire. But the card built as it went on. We started off probably with the worst fight. And it just got better and better from there. So in that aspect, fine card. But the main event though. The anticipation, I'll say the anticipation is there, the crowd is up for it, the fighters deliver. Nothing beats that. Nothing beats that. Just an absolutely tremendous watch. But you heard it earlier, we are heading to Japan for UFC 23. This time, not a 0.5 event. Not a 22.5. This is a stone cold UFC 23 Ultimate Japan 2. So we will crown a new heavyweight champion. Kevin Randleman will face Pete Williams. Some would say that Kevin Randleman should be the heavyweight champion. A lot of people unhappy with the decision against Bash Rutten. He gets the chance to rectify that against Pete Williams. And we close the book on the UFC tournament era. We're almost there. And this event marks the last one-night tournament in UFC history. So that will be fun. Join me there. Hit subscribe, hit the notify bell to find out when that video drops. It shouldn't be too far away. Like this video, comment your own thoughts below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time. UFC 23 Ultimate Japan 2, and I mean number 23, the event of the Jumpman. There will be no Michael Jordan performances on this card, folks. UFC 23 took place on November 19th, 1999 at the Tokyo Bay NK Hall in Tokyo, Japan for the last event of the millennium as SEG nears bankruptcy. This is the first event not to feature a home video release, and instead when Zuffa then takes over in the not too distant future, thankfully, a home video release is put out as part of a collection of UFC events, but we are in such dire straits that we cannot put this event on video, just to give you an indicator of just how fucked we are. We open with a video package highlighting our championship matchup and number one contender matchup, which I have multiple problems with. We'll get into them later. But we come out of this to the arena in Tokyo. We have the sponsors on the mat for the first time, I think very Pride style. And we have a small-scale ceremony to open up the event with some fireworks above the entranceway. And holy shit, the first thing I noticed is how bad the picture quality is. And we have golf commentary on top of that from our friends, of course, Jeff Blatnick and Mike Goldberg. So the problems remain the same from our first time in Japan. The crowd has decided, not to show up, which is always great. And so our commentary team now sound like they're watching Tiger Woods sink a par on the 13th hole, and it's distractingly quiet. And through the grainy footage, you can almost spot the 10 individual people who decided to actually turn up. I shit you not, it's just an empty building, and you can see it. They try and convince you it's not, but trust me, it is. We run down the card in detail that Bas Rutten has relinquished his heavyweight title with plans to fight in the middleweight division, which that title has, of course, also just been vacated by Frank Shamrock. So as of right now, Pat Miletich is genuinely the only champion in UFC, and pound for pound number one. God help us all. Bas, of course, won't fight for the middleweight title. He would be injured in training, and he would injure just about everything he possibly could. So he had to retire. Sadly, we do not have a middleweight title fight tonight. We'll just need to wait and see what happens with that. But we go to the back for the first appearance of James Werney. Fuck. Terrible with the pronunciations. But where the fuck is Joe Rogan? I feel like we haven't seen him in ages. Bas joins James, and he tells us that he wants the middleweight title. He thinks he can lure Frank Shamrock back for the fourth installment in their historic rivalry. Sadly, that won't happen, but I wish that it did. That would have been amazing, especially after the Frank and Tito fight. If he could have then followed up with a performance like he put in against Tito, but against Bas Rutten, good lord. We run down the rules and regulations as we always do, and then we show some highlights of our tournament competitors. And I have to point this out now, the audio is not good, particularly on Mike Goldberg's mic, at least at the start. It's as though he's reporting from the fish tank. I don't know how else to describe it, and I don't know why Blatnick's mic is not affected. It still doesn't sound right, but it's not as bad as Mike Goldberg's. We get our first fight in our final one-night tournament. I don't believe this. Between Katsuhisa Fuji, we'll just call him Fuji, of course, with a 1-3 record. He's up against Masutatsu Yano in his first MMA fight. You heard that correctly. Yano lost to Akira Shoji. If you're keeping up with Pride reviews, you'll have heard about Akira Shoji, but that was a grappling match, so not an MMA fight. This is his official first MMA fight. We get underway, and I'm already fearing the worst. You heard those records, folks. Yamasaki is our referee, your friend and mine, of course. And Jesus Christ, these guys are not good. Already 30 seconds in, and it looks like this is Yano's first fight. And Fuji looks as though he's 1-3. Jeff Blatnick says that the Japanese crowds maintain their emotions during the fight, and that's why they're so silent. Don't worry, guys. The crowd are here. They're just really, really quiet. I swear, it's golf commentary all night. Fuck this card. Couple minutes in, and it's full of really sloppy leg kicks and shit jabs, all at a glacial pace. So fucking slow. Yano lands a couple of knees to the body and tries to swarm Yano, who just takes him down. Fuji is just cramped into the cage as he closes the guard on Yano, and the round ends. And the first round actually went by really quick because I was so focused and so entrenched in this fight, I wasn't even looking at the clock. Like, see, sometimes when the skill level is just not good, and I'm saying that it's not good even for this time. In 1999, we've seen some bad shit. This is especially bad, and I was so fixed on it that the round went by like that. It was so fast, and nothing happened, of course. But we get into round 2, and it's somehow just as, I say somehow just as bad, as though these guys were going to develop skills in the 1 minute break. But it's just as bad, and I mean so fucking bad. It's as though it's a different world. It's a completely different sport. We're on a different planet. We are watching two guys, and one is having his first pro fight ever, and the other one is 1-3. He's been TKO'd twice in 4 fights, and oh fuck, man. Fuji catches Yano with a cross and then unleashes on Yano, swarms him up against the fence. Yamasaki calls the fight, and Fuji advances to the final of our last one-night tournament in UFC history. This is how we're going out. You have no idea how much this depresses me, that this is going to be the last tournament. Like, this is what it's not what they're remembered for, but you know how it's like the last impression. This is what you'll be remembered for, the last performance. You're only as good as your last outing. This is the last outing. Fucking depressing. Next up, we have Kenichi Yamamoto. Oh, these pronunciations are going to get me all night. Kenichi Yamamoto against Daiju Takase. We've seen Takase before. I have not been impressed either time. You will know if you've been keeping up with the reviews. But he's been in both Pride and UFC. Neither performance was good. He beat up Emmanuel. He didn't actually beat up Emmanuel Yarbrough. He beat Emmanuel Yarbrough in a fight. He just sort of danced around him for 15 minutes. And Emmanuel Yarbrough fell on top of him. Takase managed to escape. Yarbrough couldn't get back up, and Takase TKO'd him. That was that entire fight. It was not good and lasted far, far too long. But yeah, he beat Emmanuel Yarbrough. He came into UFC and he lost to Jeremy Horn. He was 30 pounds lighter than Jeremy Horn. So, I mean, what else do you really expect? Jeremy Horn is okay. In fact, that's probably a slight on Jeremy Horn. For 1999, Jeremy Horn's pretty good. This is our first time seeing Yamamoto, of course. And Blatnick reminds everyone here that the Japanese fans are really quiet, out of respect. Trust me, guys, they're in the building. They're just really, really quiet. Yamamoto comes out wearing a raincoat. Maybe he was anticipating light showers in the arena. I hate when that happens. And Mike Goldberg compares this to a Tyson walkout. No. I have absolutely no words other than no, just fucking no. Do not compare this guy to Mike Tyson. The arena's blacked out. You may have noticed. And this is always a sign that the arena is empty. See, as soon as you see this shit blacked out, UFC will darken the arena when the fight's on. But for the walkouts and shit, everything's lit up because there's actually people there. There is nobody fucking here. So we get to the octagon and Takase's lying down in what Blatnick calls meditation. Again, he's going into this fight down 30 pounds on his opponent, similar to the Jeremy Horn fight. So you can guess where this one's going to go. I have a feeling this fight is going to go the way of Yamamoto. We're just going to call him Yams, okay? Because I don't think I can keep this pronunciation up the entire time. Takase is currently 1-3-1 and Yams is 1-2. I cannot believe we are going out like this. These tournaments made legends. And Steve Jenham, of course. Gracie, Severn, Taktarov, Huas, Fry, Coleman, Vitor, Kerr, Couture, Sakuraba, amongst others I can't recall right now. What the fuck are we doing? So the bell rings. Takase leaps into the guard, and you can imagine my reaction at somebody leaping into the guard. You can also imagine my reaction when nothing happens for the entire round. Not joking. Not one word of a lie, nothing happens. We stay in guard the entire time. Into round 2, and holy fuck, just as I'm about to drift off into a peaceful slumber after round 1, I'm awoken by Jeff Blatnick's popped microphone as Takase flies with the high kick, ducked by Yams, who lands a right hand while ducking down, and Takase, on some UFC 2 physics, just goes flying into the ground. Unreal. Takase gets up and tries to fly into guard, which fails terribly. I mean, it worked the first time. He will try this repeatedly whenever the fight is on the feet, just to fly into shit. It never works, so you know what that means. You obviously keep doing it. But he tried to fly into the guard, which failed terribly, and then Yams tries to cartwheel past the guard after some struggle. We end up where we always do, in the guard, doing sweet fuck all, and that lasts about 4.5 minutes, for fuck's sake. And Takase goes for a spinning nothing, literally just spins for no reason. Takase then falls down at the end, and Yams spams elbows on him well after the bell. And like the bell goes, it must be echoing through the empty arena, so you obviously fucking heard it. And he's still dropping 12-6 elbows on this guy after the bell. Round 3, we have to suffer more of this indignity. And the thought that, like, legends were made in these tournaments. Legends. The fucking ultimate tournaments. The best of the best. And this is how we're going out. Round 3, another missed high kick, because, of course, Takase falls back and we end up in the guard again. All 22 Japanese fans in the crowd boo. In fact, I don't know if there are fans in here. It might just be camera crew and production assistants booing this fight. But again, Blatnick talks about how quiet the arena is, and all that does is just draw more attention to the fact that nobody's here. Because we've seen the Japanese crowds in Pride. They'll react to big moments. It's not as though they've taken a vow of silence. It's not as though they find fucking 10,000 mutes and put them in a building. It sounds like a morgue because nobody's there. We stay in guard for 3.5 minutes, by the way. And Takase again tries to fly into the guard. As I'm losing the will to live, the fight finally ends. And, I mean, did it even begin? Yams wins the decision, but then again, who cares? James Werme. I'm just going to call him James. James. In the back, we now see John Peretti, the matchmaker, and you better tell us right now, motherfucker, that you had nothing to do with this tournament bullshit. You have some serious heat, brother. You better tell us right now that was the Japanese promoters that put that together, because that was just fucking terrible. But we hear nothing. Radio silence on the tournament. He just does promo for the 2 middleweight matchups, which tells me I think he had nothing to do with the tournament. He just organised the typical UFC matchups that we would see. No questions about matchmaking, by the way, for the heavyweight mess that we'll get into and break down soon enough. And no words on the tournament again. I suspect that was just UFCJ, which, by the way, was intended to be its own separate company. Good fucking grief. Amongst other competitors and lack of finance. Again, thank God SEG's gone bankrupt. Amongst the lack of finance and other competitors, that never came to be. Probably for the best. Just a thought. Next up, we have Eugene Jackson versus Keiichiro Yamamiya. 48 minutes into this 3-hour card. I feel as though I've aged 10 years. This matchup is not part of the tournament. This is just your standard cold match with no meaning whatsoever. Big John is here for his first assignment of the night. He will be our referee for the foreseeable. So we're minutes in, and we're just going to call this guy Yams as well. I know his name's not Yamamoto, Yamamiya. He's Yams, okay? Yams is taking the centre. Nothing happens for about 2 minutes or so. Yams lands on Jackson, and we stumble to the floor. The punches landed, but it was like fucking Jenga the way that we fall to the floor here. This isn't a knockdown. The two just stumbled to the floor. It wasn't like Jackson got sat down or anything like that. But we Then clinch against the fence, eventually get a break. A few strikes are traded with about 30 seconds to go, but nothing else happens during the round. Pretty boring. Into the second, and Blatnick says the first round was a draw. How the fuck does that work? Because we are now using the 10-point system, thankfully, that has been brought in. They don't actually read numbers out on the scorecard at the end, they just decide whether it's a split decision or unanimous decision, but we are using the 10-point system. And it's my interpretation of the rules that there has to be at least a 10-9. So they don't explain how a fight can be deemed a draw. He asked for a 10-10 round or a 9-9 round. He just says that round is a draw. I don't know if the fucking rule changed later or if I'm going mental, but somebody has to win the round. But Blatnick says the first round's a draw. So I don't know how the fuck you make a 10-9 round a draw, but this is just what Blatnick's saying. Into the second, we get another wild exchange. Crazy trade, actually. We had a first round pretty boring. Second round, wild trade, both heads snapping back, nobody goes down, but both acknowledge the exchange, and we get another one about a minute or so later. Jackson probably getting the better of this exchange, but we end round two with some clinching against the cage. Clinching against the fucking fence and like trading dominant position without actually landing anything, right? Clinching against the fence and the guard has to be tied 1 and 2 for MMA's favourite position in the 90s. Has to be. 1A and 1B. It's either one or the other. You can pretty much bank on the round ending clinched against the fence or in the guard. Into the third, and we start the round like we did actually the last round, just wild swings, nothing really landing this time. Jackson decides to attempt a takedown, but we end up clinching against the fence, don't we always? Isn't that just the way of it? Yams swings and we're back to the fence, off the break, back to the centre, some more nothingness, general periods of nothingness, common theme here. Yams throws a straight to Jackson, Jackson leans back, lands the left hook, and down goes Yams. That is the end of the fight. Eugene Jackson is the winner. This fight had a few fun exchanges, overall rather boring. A few fun moments, great knockout. They showed a replay of the knockout. He catches that left hook flush. Great knockout. Kind of dull otherwise. They had to bring in the fucking stretcher. They thought that Yams wasn't going to be able to walk out. I don't think the KO was that bad. It was fairly impressive, but again, pretty dull otherwise. Great knockout, a few fun exchanges, otherwise pretty dull. So Eugene Jackson and Tim Lasik, who was in the corner of Jackson this whole time, we didn't actually see him until after. In fact, did we see him? He might have been in the box in the corner. I didn't notice it. But we do see him in the back, and they have a nice interview together. They come across pretty well. And I think Eugene Jackson comes back. I don't know about Tim Lasik. In fact, no, Tim Lasik is back. But next up, we have... It's not important, right? I'm so fucking burnt out on this card. Next up, Joe Slick versus Jason DeLucia. And by the way, we're probably only about an hour in. A 3-hour fucking card. We're about an hour in to this pain. Joe Slick versus Jason DeLucia. As soon as I heard the name DeLucia, I was expecting him to be out here with a prosthetic arm. Because, of course, Hoist Gracie just about ripped it off at UFC 2, which was not a good night for Big John McCarthy, now I think about it. Between the DeLucia incident where he's tapping, he's even tapping some more. And Big John stands idly by and just watches it. And that was the same night that Remco Pardo nearly terminated Orlando Veit with elbows. Not a good night for Big John. But DeLucia is up against Joe Slick, and Joe Slick we haven't seen before from Iowa, so you know he trains with Pat Miletich, so you're fearing the worst already. Goldberg says that DeLucia debuted at UFC 1, which is apparently right, okay? I thought it was UFC 2. It's not the biggest deal, it's whatever. Goldberg then says that DeLucia debuted at UFC 1 again, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, harmless mistake, because I thought that it was UFC 2. Harmless mistake, whatever. Maybe he misspoke, maybe the information's wrong. Not a big deal. Who really cares? He then goes on to say that DeLucia fought twice at UFC 1, winning 2 fights before losing to Royce Gracie, and I'm like, here, wait, what the fuck is going on? What is he talking about? I had to look up his Tapology. I thought, where the fuck did he get this information from? He didn't fight twice at UFC 1. That part is incorrect, right? So apparently he was in an alternate bout at UFC 1 and beat Trent Jenkins, whoever the fuck that is, in 52 seconds. Now, I didn't think there was an alternate bout at UFC 1. And this must be Mandela effect. Because how in the name of Christ would you let Gerard Jordeau go out there with a clear broken hand and bandaged up foot and fight Royce Gracie in the final? So Goldberg is telling me this happened. And Tapology says that this happened as well, where he fought at UFC 1 in an alternate fight. I don't believe it did. And I went on to Wikipedia to read about it. And this was edited. The UFC 1 page was edited 6 days ago. So I swear to God, when I done my UFC 1 review, that was the first review on the channel, about 4 months ago. That information, I swear to God, was not there. So God knows what happened. But anyway, back to DeLucia versus Slick. DeLucia has the long bicycle shorts on, Mo Smith style. The two dance in the middle for a second. Slick grabs a bear hug for a trip, which turns into a step over whizzer from DeLucia. Nice stuff. But Slick ends up on top and side control. We get back to the feet. Slick again goes for the bear hug and the takedown on DeLucia, who falls back, twists his knee, and screams, "Oh fuck," which you hear loud and clear, by the way, in this empty arena, and calls for the fight to be over. The replay that shows this stuff, just disgusting. The replays were super unnecessary, just uncomfortable to watch. Joe Slick then points the finger guns at the camera just to make sure you know he's a great guy, and then make sure to get his hand raised, of course, because what else do you do? But I mean, it's horrifying, but hilarious at the same time as well. He comes across better in the post-fight interview and wishes DeLucia a speedy recovery. But we can't grieve forever. We have a 6-hour pay-per-view extravaganza to sell. 6 hours of the greatest fights this new year. They'd done this before in 1997, I want to say. This time fans have voted for their top 3 fights to be featured on this event. Not bad picks, by the way, from the fans. Tito versus Shamrock, of course, a no-brainer. That would be most people's top pick. Definitely mine as well. Fans also picked Jackson versus Royce Alger, which is a decent fight. Not one of my top fights, but just because I don't have the connection to the fighters like I do with, say, Tank Abbott Don Fry, which is missing off this list from the Ultimate 96. That's a banger. But Jackson and Alger, really good KO finish, which is it's hilarious again because it's in Alger's hometown, so the arena is deathly quiet, which is always a good time. And Smith versus Coleman, also not a bad pick. When you make it to the overtime, I will specify, because when you make it to overtime, it's very entertaining. The regulation period's a little slow. It's a lot of Coleman in guard, but after a few stand-ups, Maurice Smith hits that combo in overtime, 2-2, 1-2 high kick, hits like crack. Okay, every single time, it's great. Never tired of that. So that's also not a bad pick. I do not hate any of these choices. Good job by the fans. 5 fans also got picked to get some UFC merch, and I have no idea what that merch is. Probably just a standard shirt and hat with the old logos on it. I don't remember seeing any new merch, even in the stands and the crowd with the new logos on it. I only remember the old merch. But look, thankfully, mercifully, we've arrived at the UFC 23 tournament to close out this, whatever this is. Fuji running to the octagon, Mateus Gamrot style. And we're underway. Fuji with the double leg takedown, and to guard we stay here for a couple of minutes. Some sporadic ground and pound. Yams manages to make it to the feet, only to be taken right back down again. More ground and pound from Fuji. This time a concerted effort for damage in the ground and pound after the second takedown. This round is a borderline 10-8. I'm not even joking. I couldn't believe this. See, after the performance we seen in the first fight, I could not believe how dominant he was here. The round ends with some just insane ground and pound from Yams. He is trying to take... No, sorry, from Fuji. He is trying to take Yams' head off. See, when the bell goes to end the first round, Yams looks like a broken man. He looks defeated already after the first. We still have 2 rounds to go, buddy. You better get up. Into round 2. Yams comes out flying at Fuji. He wants to get the round back. Again, borderline 10-8. If this went to the scorecards, this better have been a 10-8 round. But into the second, Yams comes flying out at Fuji with a straight right hand, ducked, and Fuji attempts to take down. He just about eventually gets it, and we're back into the guard again, of course. So Fuji into half guard, then back into the guard, nothing really happening. And now 3 minutes have gone by in the round. And now 4 minutes have gone by in the round. Nothing is happening until out of nowhere, Yams gets a knee bar and a tap out and the win. Where the fuck did that come from? And then he gets to check for $1,000,000, translating to about $10,000 in 1999 money. In 1999 US dollars, he gets 10k. I should have done the translation for what that is now. Times it by, it's probably somewhere in the mid-20s, I would guess. But I mean, what in the name of Christ happened there? This guy was getting killed. Round one, I would have put it as a 10-8. And then all of a sudden, he's like on bottom the entire time. He was on bottom suffering for 9 minutes of this fight. Randomly just fucking pulls a knee bar out of nowhere and gets the win. Good for him. $1,000,000 up for Yams. Disastrous way to end the tournament era, by the way. I'm not even going to get into it. It's still depressing me. I've already watched this whole fucking card. It's hours later and still, it hurts. We then hear from matchmaker John Peretti again, who speculates about our upcoming main event and semi-main event, number one contenders match, of course, and plays a bit of interview bingo talking about the 4 competitors. What else? Like, you know, he's asked about the competitors. He talks about their strengths and their weaknesses. General fucking interview bingo. We then get some Pedro Hizo propaganda where they just straight up lie. Just straight up lie. They say that Pedro Hizo is the only man to score multiple knockouts in UFC competition. Complete lie. They show him knocking out Tank Abbott. Tank Abbott literally has multiple knockouts in UFC competition. And even if we're not going with the whole TKO, KO, we're just talking flat out KOs. See John Matua, who Tank Abbott knocked out, having him leave the octagon wearing an oxygen mask. See Steve Nelmark, who he folded in half. Just a complete lie. But I suppose in 1999 you could just lie and you didn't have all this information readily available. Unless, of course, you had watched previous UFC events. And then you would know that Tank Abbott has multiple knockouts. But we then get some TK propaganda. And let's just get to this now. Why is Pedro Hizo in a number one contender matchup? And, like, why? In our road to the heavyweight title tournament, he won the fight against Mark Coleman that would have had him fight Bas Rutten for the belt. Bas Rutten is, of course, one of his coaches, along with Marco Huas. He doesn't want to fight Bas. He pulls out, Randleman then beats Maurice Smith, gets the title shot against Bas and loses. Now, my other problem here is TK has already beaten Pete Williams. So why does Williams get a title shot over TK? Is this because TK lost to Bas Rutten? Randleman lost to Bas Rutten as well. These matchups should be flipped. We should have a number one contender fight between Randleman and Williams. If you want to keep these same matchups, that should be the number one contender fight. And then this here should be the title fight between Hizo and TK. Just if we put our thinking hats on. Like, or we could just make the best fight and have Hizo and Randleman. There's a story to tell there where the teacher beat Randleman. Can the student do the same? And yes, that would leave Williams and TK to fight each other again, which we don't really need. But put them against other people then. And or just keep these matchups and switch the title fight. For fuck's sake, this is not difficult. The fact that Hizo won his number one contendership match in the road to the heavyweight title and now he needs to do another one. Bas Rutten beat Randleman. He gets the instant rematch for the title. and TK beat Williams, and now TK's in a number one contender fight and Williams gets the title shot. Makes no fucking sense. But I'll get off the soapbox. Bruce Buffer's here for this number one contendership matchup. We get underway. TK stays at a range of Hizzo's hands at least, and TK attempts to land leg kicks at range, which in a modern context, very Israel Adesanya. And you could say smart strategy, but also very, very boring to watch. The two mostly trade leg kicks the entire first round, the hardest ones coming from Hizzo, and that's it for the round. Literally nothing else happened. Isn't that a shame? Into the second, and some more sporadic leg kicks from both guys. Hizzo landing with more force, and you can really start to see that on TK. He is wearing the damage. His inner right thigh is purple, like it looks nasty. And I'm not even mad at this strategy. I totally get it, and it's kind of how I feel about Randleman later on. I totally get the strategy. See if that's your best way to win. Okay, so be it. And I totally get that you need to land these kicks and then make your opponent move on it, right? And put pressure on the leg. Holy shit, this is dull. Holy fucking shit, this is boring as fuck. TK tries to shoot on Hizzo. Hizzo sprawls. That'll be a common theme. We get back to the feet, a little more nothing happening. And then another shot from TK, which Hizzo sprawls on as the round ends. Again, more of the same general shit. Hizzo landing the more forceful, the more devastating strikes. And TK just kind of wants to get this to the ground. He doesn't want to eat any more leg kicks. Hizzo does a good job at sprawling, but also the damage that he's putting on the legs is making it more difficult for TK to get the takedown. Again, I'm not criticising the strategy. The strategy is effective and it's clearly working. I'm just saying it's boring to watch. But into the third, TK still able to put weight on the leg, which is surprising because he's taken a lot of damage. He's taken a lot of leg kicks and it looks really beat up. And see as I say, TK is actually doing a pretty good job. He's putting weight on the leg. He's moving around. Everything looks okay. He moves a little tentatively on the leg and walks straight into a left hand from Hizzo, which just drops him. He springs right back up. He shoots in. He gets sprawled on because of course he does. Hizzo lands a right hand. And TK is still alive, but he's just taken a knee. And he's doing this just from my perspective, which of course means everything on this channel. He's doing this to limit Hizzo's offense. He can't be soccer kicked in this position. It limits the attacks that Hizzo can actually put on him. And it makes Hizzo have to wait for TK to move before then he can attack. But TK then ends up waiting too long, and then Big John steps in and ends the fight. Now, this TKO here, clearly nothing special. Even the way I've described it doesn't make it entertaining. This made the Ultimate Knockouts collection. And good lord, they must have been scraping the bottom of the barrel if this made the Ultimate Knockouts collection. Fucking Christ. I wouldn't even have stepped in. See, if I was Big John, I would not even have stepped in. But the stoppage itself doesn't bother me. You can't just sit there on your knee forever so as not to get hit. But TK was still with it. I think forcing a stand-up here would have been more effective, but the stoppage doesn't really bother me. Hizzo was up on the scorecards. There wasn't much time left. The fight was only really going to go one way, and that was a Hizzo win, which in the end is what we got. But what that means is the actual number one contender won another number one contender match and is now the number one contender for the winner of our main event, apparently featuring the real number one contenders. So there you go, have that. And Hizzo with a nice interview after the fact, and I really like the Vale Tudo shirt that Marco Huas has on. That is some nice merch right there, probably went triple platinum at the merch stand. We get some Randleman propaganda, nice transition to Pete Williams propaganda. They're able to tell the story that Pete Williams knocked out Randleman's teacher, Mark Coleman, and now can the student avenge the loss against Pete Williams? And this highlights my point. This match does not need the title around it, right? This fight already has the story. You could make this a number one contenders matchup. we don't need the belt on the line for this because these guys shouldn't really be the number one contenders. So Pedro Hizo should be the heavyweight champion right now. But anyway, into the fight we've all been waiting on, the last one. Kevin Randleman takes on Pete Williams. Immediately, Randleman shoots. Immediately. And by the way, they didn't show his fucking massive vertical leap before the fight, which was a letdown. That's always a highlight of Randleman. The highlights are everything before the fight and at the end of the fight in his interview. Everything in between with Randleman you can basically miss. But elsewise, everything outside the actual fighting part is amazing with Randleman. But immediately Randleman shoots. Williams actually shows more resolve to the takedown than I think Blatnick even thought was possible. As soon as Williams is able to initially defend the takedown and even get on top of Randleman for a brief moment, Jeff Blatnick literally goes, "Oh wow," like he's fucking stunned that anybody could put up any sort of fight against a Randleman takedown. So, glancing round and pound from Randleman, nothing really devastating lands, but with about 40 seconds to go, Williams gets up. He's able to get back to the feet. He lands 3 shots, I think. 3 shots or so on the feet to Randleman. Slightly off balance knockdown, but I would count this as a knockdown, given what Randleman says after the fact. This is a knockdown. And based on the damage here, I'm giving this round to Williams. He was on bottom for about, fucking 4.5 minutes. He done more in this 30 seconds than Randleman done the entire time. So I'm giving this round to Williams. And by the way, the bell rings. Randleman, you could argue here, saved by the bell. I think with 10 more seconds, he could have been finished. Randleman, saved by the bell, doesn't get up after the bell goes. What the fuck? Why is the fight not over? I don't know if Randleman needed help to the corner. They didn't show it. On camera, at least. They were playing highlights and replays of the round. But what the fuck is that? Pete Williams should have fucking won right there. He couldn't get up after the bell. What? Into the second. Honest to God. And I knew who won this fight watching it. And I'm still thinking, wait, how the fuck? He can't... After the bell, he's lying there holding on to the referee. What, like, how's that? How are we not getting stopped? But into the second, Randleman with the takedown into guard. We are here forever. Boring as fuck. And Pete Williams from bottom attempts an armbar, but Randleman is able to escape and is back to guard, and we run out the rest of the round in the guard. Not even joking. We run out the rest of the round in the guard and score this however you want. Okay, Williams was the only one who attempted a submission, got closest to a finish. I give this one to Williams as well, along with the first round. And look, stay on top for however long you want. If you don't follow this up with any sort of damage, improving your position, or attempting a submission, then what the fuck am I supposed to give you points for? The takedown alone and staying in the guard the whole time? What the fuck? 10-9 Williams. Sorry. Into the third. Randleman gets Williams to the ground again. Lands about a single good punch. And then over 2 minutes later, he lands another less good punch. This is absolutely chronic. Third round, 10-9 Randleman. And people might watch that, right? I looked at some other reaction for this card and therefore this fight. But, you know, people still gave that first round to Randleman even though he'd done no damage and gets sat down at the end of the round and then couldn't answer after the bell for call 30 seconds. Like, what is that? You know what I mean? That's a pretty decent amount of time to be able to stand up and go back to your corner. He couldn't even do that after the first round. People still gave the round to Randleman. It's whatever. Into the fourth, I have it 2-1 Williams after the third, but into the fourth, double leg by Randleman, standard, into the guard, standard, sporadic ground and pound, interrupted by periods of nothing, standard. This is like, see if we had the 5-round system with Mark Coleman, this is what I imagine it would be like. Although, see, by the time you got to round 4 and 5, this is where Randleman, I don't know if it's just youth or if he's really that much of like a better all-round athlete, but his cardio is significantly better than Mark Coleman. I mean, we're seeing that here against Pete Williams, but we also did see that against Bas Rutten, where you might have predicted just because he's the student of Mark Coleman, he would be really similar that way, where he would get gassed towards the end. He shows no signs of slowing down. He still is able to keep that energy from the first round. Even with the injury, Blatnick's saying, maybe broken ribs, and that's why he couldn't get up after the first round. But he's still keeping that energy from the first round all the way up through the fifth. But after the fourth, 10-9 Randleman, so into the fifth, and for me, personally watching this, whoever takes this round wins the fight, and therefore wins the belt. The Hammerhouse corner genuinely may be brain dead, right? I don't know how much damage Pete Williams done with that head kick. They're trying to say that Randleman is way ahead. Are you fucking stupid? Was Coleman, I'm speaking to you directly, were you way ahead of Hizzo when you lost? Was Randleman way ahead of Rutten when he lost? I don't understand the psychology of the corner when you've already been done dirty by this in your mind. This is a close fight. For me, it's 2-2. Whoever wins this round wins the belt. Saying you're way ahead and make him come to you is cornering malfeasance and a good way to get robbed again, or at least feel as though you've been robbed again. Into the fifth, another takedown for Randleman, and he's just riding Williams. Williams rolls, Lions Den style, able to get back to the feet. Nothing even happens on the feet. It's not even a case of, well, he's holding me down, I can't do anything. We're on the feet here for a prolonged period of time. Randleman keeps circling, keeping his hands up high to block the head kick, and kind of just baiting the low kick, I suppose. Just trying to open up Williams for another takedown. Finally, with a minute left, Big John has to tell these guys, here, do something. You guys have stunk the joint out on an already stinky card. We are in the slaughterhouse right now, and you've still managed to stink the joint out. Randleman lands a couple of punches with a few seconds left. I think he's taken a round. We go to the decision. The judges score this contest unanimously for the winner and new UFC heavyweight champion, the monster, Kevin Randleman, as streamers fly into the octagon. Correct decision. I think Randleman took this 3-2. And this is the thing with Randleman. This is the thing. See, whenever I think he has a boring fight, which is pretty regular, but when I think Randleman has a boring fight, he always has a great post-fight interview. He genuinely comes across so likeable and just the nicest guy ever. So it's so difficult to actually hate him, which other guys with this kind of style I would be really critical of and go scorched earth on. Randleman just seems like the nicest guy ever. So it's difficult for me to go scorched earth on him. But we sign off here, domo arigato, sayonara, and that brings UFC 23 to a close. We end on a nice note. And sadly, the best thing on this card is Kevin Randleman's post-fight interviews. It's not even anything that he says that's funny or this and that. He just genuinely comes across like the nicest person ever. So that's the nice note that we end on. But otherwise, I'm being serious. Torch this card. Genuinely. Burn the tapes. Save Randleman's interview. He seems like a great guy. Do not watch anything on this card. Nothing. It is offensive. A sad way to close out the millennium for MMA. A sad way to close out the tournament era of UFC. I'm happy for Kevin Randleman, and that's about it. At least we have a heavyweight champion who now plans on defending the belt. We'll get to that at UFC 24, because you couldn't write what's about to happen next. But after Randy Couture, after Bashrutin, at least the title isn't gonna at least it's not gonna be vacated like the heavyweight title has been, or like the middleweight title is now. But if Randleman's fights continue on this current trend, he better be loading up the interviews of his life, because they are about the only thing preventing me going scorched earth on him. Or at least on the fight style. It is... that's the thing. They show Randleman's like pre-fight comments, and they didn't have them on this card. They've had him on other cards where he comes across great, and he gets the promotion aspect and the trash talk, but still maintaining the line of like being respectful. And his post-fight interviews are great, but Jesus Christ, the fights are not good. And like, as for this card as a whole, the tournament fights were terrible, not good. Eugene Jackson gets a nice KO, but it's ultimately a meaningless matchup. It's a cold match. We don't really have rankings. I don't really fancy Eugene Jackson getting the next title shot. He just fucking beat some guy up. You know, he just beat some guy up who he probably should have won against. And look, horrendous finish for Slick against DeLucia. You don't like to see that, and the replays were super unnecessary. I don't need to see some guy fucking break his leg on repeat. I don't know if he did break his leg, but it sure as fuck looked like that. Hizzo beat TK to become the number one contender. Again, pretty fucking dull match. And he won the number one contendership. He was already the number one contender. What the fuck? And Randleman, again, great moment for him. Fairly boring fight. So all in all, nothing to go back and watch. But sadly, also nothing to look forward to either. Looking at the UFC 24 card, I know what happens with the main event to an extent already. I don't know what happens with the new main event. But we have potentially an all-time stinker here. Dan Severn is a special guest referee for the prelims, for whatever reason. A cancelled main event, and the debut of Jens Pulver. This has potential to be some of the worst shit I have ever seen. And by the way, this is another one that doesn't get a home video release. It would be put out on DVD as a double feature. With this card, 23 and 24 packaged together, good God almighty. If you bought that double feature, you were robbed, you should sue, you are owed. But join me next time at UFC 24. Hit subscribe and the notify bell to find out when that video drops. Like this video, comment your own thoughts below, and I will see you all very soon. UFC 24 first defence took place on March 10th, 2000 at the Lake Charles Civic Centre in Lake Charles, Louisiana. The headline offer, the draw for this event, is the first title defence of the new UFC heavyweight champion Kevin Randleman. He's scheduled to fight Pedro Hizzo in our main event. We will see what happens there. We open with a montage of some nice knockouts and moments over some recent events and some not so recent events. And we hear the narrator tell us that it's time to get real. I'll always remember, let's open up the gate, right? That's what it is for me. We go to commentary, we see Mike Goldberg and Jeff Blatnick. Mike introduces Jeff, hands it over to him by saying the heavyweights will take centre stage. You then expect Jeff Blatnick to take over, maybe talk about something, maybe talk about our main event, and he probably did on the original broadcast. But as soon as it gets handed over to Jeff opens up his mouth. We then transition away from commentary to the octagon, where now it's Mike Goldberg talking to us. We never hear what Jeff Blatnick has to say. So I'm presuming he went on an uncomfortable rant about geopolitics, the shifting demographics in America around the year 2000, probably the Clinton administration, as well as the impending Bush versus Gore election. So sadly, we didn't get to hear about all of that. We just got to hear Mike Goldberg run down the rules, the regulations, the ways to win. Jeff Blatnick goes on to tell us that who the judges are, And it's as though his mic gets cut off halfway through, and then we get another cut, another transition, and then Mike Goldberg tells us who the judges are. The government must be trying to silence Jeff Blatnick. So we get into our first fight. Future UFC Hall of Famer Jens Pulver makes his debut. The student of Frank Shamrock is his opponent, David Velasquez. or David, I'm not sure. Jens Pulver, trained by Pat Miletic, we cannot escape this fucking guy. Trained by Miletic tends to mean that Jens is about to stink the joint out, okay? We're told he's a power puncher and a good wrestler. Sounds like propaganda to me. They're trying to cover their bases in case this is boring, so they can turn around and go, well, this isn't what we expected. But we get underway with the first UFC fight of the new millennium, right? This is the first fight in the UFC of the year 2000. Velasquez goes for a roundhouse, which is caught by Pulver, doesn't even land, no damage done, and Mike Goldberg with the Joe Rogan-esque, ow! Pulver literally caught it, took him down, did not even connect whatsoever. Jens lands a couple of left hands on the ground, and Mike Goldberg, who started off the broadcast just completely unbearable, right? It's he is freaking the fuck out whilst nothing is happening. And also Blatnick is just insufferable. Velasquez makes it back to the feet. Jens, in a classic Miletic move, clinches, pushes Velasquez back against the cage, tries to knee, lands some left hands before we break and move back to centre. And I'm about to mute the audio, okay? Because what we've done here is we've turned up the mics in the corner to hear Shamrock and Miletic, and we are hearing them. But commentary is now also talking over them, creating this cacophony of noise. Just unbearable. Everybody is screaming, yelling over each other. The audience is in there as well. Just terrible production, terrible commentary. I don't need to hear everything from the corner. Turn the mics down. And also, I don't need to hear everything from commentary either. I don't need to hear them try and yell over the top of the corner and the audience to try and fit their point of view in as well. Their point of view sucks. Pulver lands a knee in the clinch, and then another, which actually drops Velasquez, and Mike Goldberg, whilst eating the microphone, screams into his fucking PlayStation headset. My volume on the TV when I was watching this was on 5. It goes up to 100. I still can't even hear myself think over commentary. And for the first time in Retro Review history, I am muting the commentary. 10 minutes and 46 seconds into this 2 hour and 20 minute broadcast. It's done. I'm not listening to the screaming anymore. Pulver is clearly levels above Velasquez, just beating him up on the feet, gets a takedown into side mount, full mount, ends the round with Pulver attempting an armbar when the horn goes. This could have been 10-8 Pulver. He just beat the shit out of Velasquez. He looked really good, I'm impressed. Into the second, Pulver clinches, lands a couple knees before getting a takedown. Looks as though an arm triangle could be open, but he opts for full mount instead, lands some nice ground and pound. Velasquez is just trying to hold on at this point. Miletic in the corner actually calls for the 12-6 elbows, and Pulver does that, which then opens up the ability to land the straights from the top. And I think Big John wanted to see Velasquez die, and so he just let this go on for way too long before then stopping the fight. Pulver wins in what was the best lightweight fight we've seen up to this point. And credit to Miletic. See, I will give credit to Miletic for the call on the 12-6 elbows, and I've never discredited his ability as a coach. He's very smart, and he's a smart fighter too. It's just that results in fucking boring matches. But Pulver looked great here, and nice win. So now we have TK coming out. He's trained by Tito Ortiz, another lunatic from Huntington Beach, and he's up against crazy Bob Cook. Starts off at an absolute sprint. Cook charges at TK, they trade punches, and TK clinches, lands some knees. Cook takes him down. TK's immediately back up. We stay in the clinch, we're back down. TK on top. Cook puts TK in the guard and attempts an armbar. TK escapes, and I shit you not, all of this happened in the first 25 seconds of the fight. All of it. Oh, good grief. And by the way, I think Shamrock's in the corner of Cook. So after that sprint for 25 seconds, we calm down here. Cook attempts the single leg, doesn't get the takedown, but he's able to drive TK back to the cage. He still can't get the takedown though. We break, and TK now starts landing rights and lefts on Cook. The technique is nothing to write home about here, but he's landing at least. And now Cook tries to take him down, but TK ends up on top into half guard, and we're back to the feet. It's absolute chaos in this opening round. I can't even describe, there's no other word for it other than chaos. We then trade knees to the body in the clinch. Absolutely no defence from either guy. We're just all out attack here. All offense, no defense. We whiff a whole bunch of shit. We whiff a whole bunch of high kicks before then another takedown attempt from Cook, which ends up with him pulling guard, and eventually we're back to the feet before the end of the round. With 30 seconds to go, we get another slugfest again. This has just been a fucking brawl from the start. Ridiculous. And I don't know how you score this first round. I really don't. TK lands a 3 or 4 piece combo, which Cook just eats before the horn sounds. So, honestly, 10-9 either way. And it's not actually going to matter. So, I mean, thank God, because I don't know how you score that round. Into the second, and we do not kick off with the frantic pace like we did before. Cook gets the takedown into half guard. He's on top, and he's able to get to mount. TK turns in the mount, which is about as good as tapping. And I'm being dead serious on that. You might as well just tap. I've said this before on the channel. I don't understand why the fuck you turn in mount. You're getting punched in the face, and I get no one wants to get punched in the face. But now when you turn your back, all you do is give up the neck. And now you can't see the punches coming. What the fuck, right? So I don't know why people do it, but they continue to do it even to this day, turning in the mount. More often than not does spell the end, and it did here. Rear naked choke and the win for Bob Cook, who even says, right, in his post-fight interview, he says, as soon as he gave me the back, it was wraps. Because obviously it was. Look at the corner of TK here, just fucking ridiculous. But yeah, obviously, of course it was. As soon as TK turned round in the mount, even I was saying like, oh fuck, okay, this is it. And Bob knew it too. Bob got the choke, Bob got the win. And now Pat Miletich is going to join us here on commentary. And this would be a timeline entirely too good to exist. By the way, Cook had an interview, nothing really of note. Him and Shamrock just had a laughing joke with James. But Pat Miletich is on commentary, and he's asked, in a timeline entirely too good to exist, do you plan on retiring? Boy, I wish. Boy, I wish. There's apparently rumours of Pat Miletich's retirement in the year 2000. He's here to set the record straight. He is not retiring. He plans to fight in the summer, God help us all, after rehabbing his back, which he apparently hurt. He says he plans to open a training gym in the winter. This is obviously at the start of the year. And then they talk a little bit about Jens Pulver and give him credit for his performance. So Pat Miletich, he's already kind of training all these guys anyway, but now he wants to open up his own gym. Next up, we have Dave Manet versus Fabiano Iha, who manages to still get booked, even though he has not looked good once. We last saw him in Pride against Frank Trigg, I think, where he got fucked up from the word go. So we also seen him lose to Laverne Clark. Laverne Clark becoming the first boxer in UFC to win a UFC fight, which isn't a good look for Ia, who commentary try and tell is 8-2, by the way. So you're telling me we've seen this guy, we've seen both this guy's losses, he's looked terrible twice, and it just so happens they were his worst performances ever, because he's undefeated elsewise, so we just seen him at his lowest moments, and elsewise he's really fucking good. So Iha gets the takedown quickly. Off that takedown, he then attempts the armbar. Manet escapes and stands back in the centre. This is going to be a common theme throughout this fight. Manet lands a nice left hand before we then clinch. Nothing really comes of it. We break, more dilly-dallying between the two of them. Then another clinch. Manet in the dominant position against the fence, and then another break. Ia shoots, gets sprawled on. Mane just lands 2 knees to the head of the grounded opponent. And nobody says anything, nobody does anything. We just move on as though nothing happened and nobody mentions the rules. Which, I mean, terrific, just great stuff. So Mane is now on top in the guard and we're back to the feet. Nothing happening. There's a lot of activity. People are moving. There's a whole lot of activity, yet no action, if that makes sense. They're moving, they're doing stuff, no damage or anything actually, important to really score and win the fight. It's a lot of getting into position and then just backing off and then reset the fight. Mane, again, blatantly cheating, multiple fence grabs, nothing said, nothing done about it. Big John maybe mentions it once, he warned him one time and then just drops it even though he continues to do it. No punishment whatsoever, and the round ends after Ia pulls guard and then Mane just stands back up. This, oh, good grief. Right, round 2, by the way, round 2. Starts with Mane peppering Ia up against the fence. He takes a few shots before then just pulling guard. We stay here for a while, for about 2 minutes. Very limited ground and pound, before we then just stand back up. After we stand back up, Mane goes for another flurry, landing a 1-2, then a roundhouse to the body. Then Ia just pulls guard again. I genuinely have no words. What the fuck are you doing? And see, even if he was pulling him into his guard and he was actually gaining something from it, then okay, whatever, I don't like it, but at least I understand it. You're pulling him into guard and then he's just standing up 30 seconds later with no fight. This was an unbelievably frustrating fight to watch. No activity, not doing anything with the guard. Just let Mane lie on top of you before he just then stands back up. No challenge, no resistance. I hate this fight. So we stand up, we clinch again. You know where this is going already. Ia pulls guard again. He's fucking terrible. We stand back up again with no resistance. Reset the fight with 10 seconds left. And you would think with 10 seconds left, right, okay, that's going to be it. No. Don't worry. Because we still have time to pull guard again before the round ends with 10 seconds left. This fight sucks ass. Into the third, Ia shoots and an initial sprawl before Ia then just pulls guard again. What? And then why am I even watching this shit? Okay, Mane just stands back up. We clinch again. Ia pulls guard again. I'm skipping to the finish of the fight. I don't even care what happens. If there was a good punch, if there was a good knee, I had to rewatch the fight again to be able to get the pictures on the screen right now. Nothing happened. Nothing, of course, happened. There was no good punches. There was no good knees. I don't even care. I'm not wasting another 4 minutes of my life watching this fight. Mane wins by decision, obviously he did. And see, after rewatching it to get the pictures on the screen here, see after the horn goes to end the fight, Ia actually has the gall, the nerve to raise his hands up after the fight like he done something in there. Like there's any possibility or chance I'll raise my arms up and maybe the judges will give me the third round after I've done nothing but pull guard and then just let him stand back up again. Maybe they'll give me that. Fuck you. I really hope Ia doesn't get booked again. I haven't looked at his record to see if he does get booked here or in Pride after this. But guys, he's now 8-3. So we've seen every single one of this guy's defeats. None of his wins. He's looked fucking buns every single time. What a worthless 15 minutes. And after 2 good fights to start the card, right? TK and Cook was good. Jens Pulver put on a fucking clinic. We get these 2 guys out here to shit the bed. And I'm not even entirely blaming fucking Mane for it. But we've seen Iha now twice look terrible, and you're still putting him on this card. Why? We then run some promo after that for UFC 25, and we advertise a huge main event, Tito Ortiz versus Wanderlei Silva. I cannot wait for this. Tito has been on a streak of really good fights recently, an all-timer against Frank Shamrock, and Wanderlei Silva has been doing the business over in Pride FC. This is a great matchup and a great main event for the vacant UFC Middleweight Championship. We remember Frank Shamrock, after beating Tito Ortiz, decided to retire and relinquish the championship. Tito is now on commentary. They ask about the fight with Shamrock, and Tito is actually in pretty good spirits here. He says he's now been working with Frank Shamrock since he is the best in the world. He also name drops Chuck Liddell, amongst others, that he's working alongside. Tito's one of my favourites. He is really good, and he comes across dead likeable in his interviews when he can actually speak English. And I'm really looking forward to this fight against Wanderlei Silva. So into the fourth fight on the card, we have two more guys that we don't know, Lance Gibson and Jermaine Andre, and Dan Severn is at cageside in his referee attire. Or he is a Foot Locker employee. Apparently, according to my sources, he was the referee during the prelim fights. We will eventually then see them later on. And he thought he would dress up for the occasion and not then bring a spare shirt. So he was just walking around in referee shirt all night. I have no words. So, I mean, I'd try and get one of those Big John shirts with the pay-per-view embroidery on it. I think those shirts are cool. But look, we stay in the clinch here. The fight starts, we're in the clinch, and the pancreation fighter that you might have seen on the tail of the tape, okay, he's a pancreas guy. He gets the upper hand in the clinch over the Muay Thai fighter. And then the double leg from Lance, who's now on top in the guard. Lance able to pass the half guard, and now we hear from the corner again. I've unmuted obviously because Tito Ortiz was at the desk, and now he's still on commentary, and even he knows to lay out when the corner is talking. And it struck me now, why don't we just put fucking Dan Severn on commentary instead of refereeing? If he's already here and he's already getting paid, I'd rather have him at the desk. But look, back to the fight. Lance has been on top this whole time. By the way, not like an attempt for an armbar at the end allows Jermaine to get up, who, by the way, at the end of the first round lands a major combo, seconds left to go. The left hook knocks down Lance, nearly finishes the fight with some ground and pound. And I thought he was about to steal the fight. He's been dominated this entire round. And with 30 seconds left to go, he almost salvaged the round for himself. You could argue he won it, to be fair, at the end. Into the second, in that last round there, we ended at a sprint with Jermaine Andre landing that combo and almost getting the finish. So we ended with a sprint. We now start here with a crawl. We clinch against the fence, Miletich style, and the crowd starts to get a little restless. Lance lands some good knees in the clinch, again Miletich style, but he is so fucking chinny that Andre, back against the fence, lands a left hook, then another right hook on Lance, and it looks as though he's rocked. He's still in control, but you can tell he gets stunned by that. It's as though it sent a shock through his whole body. Lance ends up getting the takedown and holding half guard for the rest of the round because he panicked, honestly. So into the final round, you could argue 1-1. Jermaine got dominated in round 1, but last 30 seconds he done more damage than Lance. Lance had the armbar attempt, but Jermaine was able to escape. You know, it just depends on whatever way you score it. But we start the third, as always, clinched against the fence. We stay here, by the way, holding the body lock for nearly 4 minutes. And then with 90 seconds to go, the pancreation fighter, again by the way, grabs the Muay Thai fighter, knees him in the head whilst clinched, and knocks him the fuck out cold. Jermaine face plants to the mat, unresponsive, eyes open. He looks dead for a second, until then, thankfully, he moves his arm so we know he's still alive. And I don't know what happened to the audio here, but now everyone's mic on commentary is now muffled. The noise is now really distorted. Thank God this company is going bankrupt. The audio has been absolute poison all night. The fight here, let's just talk about the fight. The fight had its moments. It had some big moments interrupted by long periods of nothing between like the armbar attempt and a knockdown in round 1. Round 2, Jermaine's stun lands again, and into round 3 you're thinking, wow, this is really fucking boring. And then you just get caught off guard like that. You just get caught by surprise, kind of like Jermaine did. Big finish. And now, by the way, Jermaine now has a full medical team and oxygen tank in the cage, so God knows what condition he's in. Commentary keeps telling us he's okay. Sounds more hopeful than it looks, to be honest. He looked halfway to see the Lord, basically. He looked like he was gone. But we get a nice interview from Lance Gibson and then some Frank Shamrock propaganda. He joins the commentary desk, and this is kind of just like a conversation. It's not even really an interview. It's just like a chat with the boys. A chat between these three guys, Mike Goldberg, Frank Shamrock, Jeff Blatnick, Nightmare Blunt Rotation. We ask about his career, his marriage. We transition to him training other fighters. And, like, I noticed here that we're talking for a long time. It feels a little bit like stalling and Mike Goldberg looking off camera every now and again. Like, remember back in the tournament era, if you were watching the retro reviews then, we used to get this, particularly the early ones, where they're looking for an alternate. They're looking for a replacement in the back. We're stalling for time. Like, and it hit me that we were stalling for time when we started talking about Chuck Norris. And then we just keep talking and keep talking about nothing. And then we start showing prelim fights. Okay, what the fuck is going on? What's going on is, whilst warming up in the back, Kevin Randleman slipped on the floor, hit his head and knocked himself out. I'm not kidding. So Randleman's taken away in an ambulance to the hospital to be revived, concussed obviously. So the scheduled main event between Kevin Randleman and Pedro Hizo will not happen. This is rescheduled for UFC 26. The main event is cancelled. And the audience doesn't know about it until it's time to put the main event in the cage. But they aren't getting the main event they paid to see. But on our screen right now, for the paying customer at home watching this pay-per-view, again, pay-per-view, remember, what's on now is a lightweight prelim fight, which sounds like Dante's 7th level Inferno in the year 2000. Shoney Carter, Brad Gum, with Dan Severn as the special guest referee. What is happening? And look at the state of fucking Shoney Carter's gear. What is going on with the one full leg and the one short leg gear, the wrapped ankles that don't match the fucking bottoms? What the fuck is this gear? Nothing happens until Gum is able to lock in a triangle. Well, lock in to an extent, because he just holds it in for a long time, but Carter doesn't tap. He's just content to sit there, which tells me he's not in. Carter ends the round on top, landing some slow and shit ground and pound. Into the second, Carter on top in the guard, some really slow, some really clunky striking. Carter gets a nice throw, but we're back to the feet. It's as though I'm watching Manny versus Ia again, where you're just taken down or clinched up, and then you're just like, let go, and then we just reset. That's just what we do. So Carter in the guard, some reversals back and forth. Who gives a shit? Carter wins the decision, and I get that you need to put something in the cage while you scramble for a main event, but putting prelim fights on when you've already watched the main card is so depressing, because you know these guys aren't as good as the guys we've seen. So the quality falls right off a cliff, whilst commentary tries to tell you that this is the best thing ever. How great is this? And you're watching like, I just seen Jens Pulver kill someone. I just watched TK and Bob Cook go to war in a chaotic brawl and get a finish. I don't care about either of these guys. And I suppose, look, you're scrambling for a main event in the back for a matchup. You put this on, it's whatever, but I just don't need to see it. Have Frank Shamrock talk on commentary more about Chuck Norris instead, you know. But look, the time has come. We've managed to scrape together a main event. Ted Williams versus Steve Judson. Mike Goldberg says, how lucky are our fans that they get more heavyweight action? not from our advertised main event, not from the number 1 and number 2 heavyweights in this company. You can't even say the world, Pride has that, but the number 1 and number 2 heavyweights in this company. You don't get to see that. Here's 2 random guys we found hanging about. How lucky are you to witness Steve Judson and Ted Williams go fuck yourself? Bruce says that Steve Judson's no stranger to the octagon. Could have fooled me. But Steve was at UFC 22 and Brad Kohler knocked him the fuck out in 30 seconds flat, face planted, stiff as a board, out cold. So that's why we don't remember him. Steve almost knocks down Williams, and again, look, more clunky heavyweights. Williams is just like walking forward, trying to clinch, just eating strikes. He can't get a takedown, but finally gets an underhook to stop the onslaught. Doesn't last long, because Steve again lands a big right hook and a knee to the body. But he's so chinny that the first strikes that Williams lands ends up being the finish of the fight. 1 right hook, he then spams 4 uppercuts to the body in the clinch. 1 more right hook up top, that lands. They then separate. Williams lands a jab on Judson, who then crumples to the floor in a heap and loses the fight. Somehow. Genuinely get hit with 2 hooks, 4 body shots, and a jab. Finished. Finito. Done. They then try to fill more time on the card by showing another prelim fight. We're already past the 2-hour mark, by the way, but hey ho, here we are. You could have ended this card just after Randleman and Hizzo got cancelled, but here we go. Scott Adams and Ian Freeman. Adams immediately shoots, starts rolling for leg locks. Some decent defence here by Freeman. Now Adams looks for the heel hook again. Locked in, working for it for a while. And then eventually gets the finish as Freeman taps. And that's that. That's the card. We don't then go back to cage side. Again, think about this. You're the paying pay-per-view customer. We don't go back to cage side to sign off. We don't care that much. We have commentary. Commentary doesn't even tell us what the fuck's going on. They don't care enough to tell us about the fight being rescheduled, why we didn't get the fight we paid for, what the fuck happened to Randleman and Hizzo. We just run a montage of tonight's fights. And that brings UFC 24 to a close. And they have the gall to turn around at the end and say, wasn't that a great event? See you next time. Because we know you'll be back, you fucking mugs. See you next time. I cannot wait for this company to go bankrupt. Let's just talk about this event as a whole here. I cannot wait for SEG to go out of business. We started off hot. Jens Pulver with the fight of the night. Well, I say fight of the night. He put on an absolute masterclass. It was probably performance of the night. Best lightweight fight in UFC to that point. Most impressive performance. TK and Cook was then a fun brawl. It goes into the positive column. The technique wasn't tremendous, but it was fun while it lasted. So we got the card off to a really good start, and then it just sort of fell off a cliff because we then had to watch Manny versus Iha, which was absolute torture. I wouldn't show it to a fucking blind guy. It was so heinous. Lance Gibson and Jermaine Andre, that had its moments. I wouldn't say it was a bad fight. It had some decent shit in there. A few finishing sequences that, well, sort of false finishes, we'll call them. Some heavy strikes, submission attempts, and a good knockout finish. If you ignore that the finish was preceded by 4 minutes of body lock against the fence, then yeah, it was great. Like, I wouldn't put it in great fight category, but it goes into the positive column at least. But then Judson and Williams being subbed for Randleman and Hizzo is criminal. And trying to sell it to the viewer, not as disappointment, which it is, it's disappointing, Mike Goldberg just straight up lying to you, destroying what's left of his credibility, saying, well, we have more great heavyweight action between two nobodies. One guy just got knocked out in 30 seconds last time you seen him, and the other guy you've never fucking seen before is shocking. And I get it, look, main event gets cancelled, you're scrambling for shit. But you need to be honest with what's happening, tell us what's happened, and then say, right folks, sorry about that, but here you go, here's at least something, and then close on that. We do not, the prelim fights, see, unless there's a crazy knockout, I don't need to see them. Do not interrupt the live broadcast to go back to a half-empty building or a quarter-full building, because the building's half empty when you get to the main card. For the prelims, it's even more empty. And again, you have to think on your feet. Your main event just get taken away in an ambulance. But be honest with the viewer about it. See, whilst you stall, you have Frank Shamrock sitting there, Dan Severn's here, Big John, talk to more people. Where the fuck was the matchmaker, Peretti? He didn't want to show his face here. He does on every other fucking card. He didn't want to stand beside this one. And that's another UFC card where the advertised fight doesn't actually take place. And I get it, you can't really help this one. Randleman gets injured at the event. But you would have a lot more credit in the bank if this wasn't such a regular occurrence. And a final point. Commentary was terrible. There you go, that's that. So Jens Pulver should get all the bonuses for the evening. And ironically, see when UFC released the encyclopedia or whatever, and they retroactively went back and they gave these awards to folk, I don't think they actually paid them, but they said this was KO of the night, this was sub of the night, this was performance. Yeah, Jens Pulver didn't get anything. So, not to worry. Who will get performance of the night next time at UFC 25 Ultimate Japan 3? That's right, folks, we're going back to Japan because the first two times we went there, it worked out so well, didn't it? So obviously we're going back. Why is SEG going bankrupt again? Can someone remind me? Tito and Vanderlei in the main event should be good. I'm looking forward to that. And in fact, let me tell you something. This card only has 4 fights on it. This upcoming card, UFC 25, has 4 fights on it, 2 prelim fights, because we need to make time for John Peretti interviews in between all the matchups. Because the matchmaker has to be seen again. Because he's in position to put himself on TV, so he does it every opportunity he gets. Only when he doesn't want to tell people, you aren't getting your main event tonight, does he decide then not to put himself on television. So we get to be graced with the presence of John Peretti again. How lucky are we? 2 hours and 45 minutes, folks, for a 4-match main card. Fucking embarrassment. That's 41 minutes per fight. But, you know, we'll have to throw the 2 prelim fights in there as well before the main event to completely kill the card and the vibes. Half an hour shit break right there. Prelims with people you've never heard of and don't care about either. Remember last time? Last time we went to Japan and we held the last UFC tournament, they were putting guys with a 1-3 record against guys having their first pro fight ever. Fuck SEG, fuck matchmaking. They deserve bankruptcy, and I cannot wait for Dana White, when he was less baldy, to come in and buy this thing. And I also cannot wait for you to like this video, hit subscribe, hit the notify bell, and comment your own thoughts below. Share with a friend. Thank you very much for watching. Fucking hell. UFC 25 Ultimate Japan 3 took place on April 14th, 2000 at the Yoyogi National Gymnasium in Tokyo, Japan. By the way, Pride's first event of the year 2000 in January drew 48,000 people at the Tokyo Dome. But that's just a side note. To start off, we have a video package taking us to UFC 22, what a time to be alive. Frank Shamrock has just beaten Tito Ortiz in a classic and then relinquished the belt. So the title is now vacant and will be fought for by Tito Ortiz and Wanderlei Silva. Amazing matchup on paper, because Tito has become a big star here in UFC and Wanderlei has been killing it in Pride, so I'm looking forward to this one most certainly. And it is time to get real in what I'm presuming is another empty arena here in Japan, hence why it's all blacked out. And the building's actually so empty that even our commentary team, Mike Goldberg and Jeff Blatnick, are now reporting to us from a green screen and not live at ringside. So they exchange pleasantries. Again, I have no idea where this is being filmed. It's most certainly not at ringside. But then we move into some interviews. We have James Werme, who's interviewing Tito Ortiz. He asks about his plans for Wanderlei Silva tonight, and he says he's planning to use his grappling advantage. Tito is indeed off the back of winning the bronze medal at the ADCC in Abu Dhabi. Also gives credit to Wanderlei for being the best in his weight class. Now that Frank Shamrock's retired, it definitely is between Tito, Wanderlei, Sakuraba. These are the kind of names floating around at the time. Then again, Vitor Belfort is about to come back from his year-long hiatus. And I feel as though I'm forgetting somebody else. Well, Chuck Liddell isn't where Chuck Liddell is going to be, but he's on the way up. We then break down the rules and the ways to win, and tell me how exactly you can have 4 judges. How does that work exactly? Why would you have an even number of judges? Just a completely brain-dead move. But we run down the card, and it's East Side versus West Side. The Japanese fighters are up against the Westerners. And then we have an actual good main event, whilst the rest of the card is dreck. So we now have John Peretti to answer for this absolute war crime of a card. And he then just starts, again, breaking down the card. This would normally be done by commentators at cage side, but then again, commentators aren't here. So John Peretti rears his head again. I won't go so far as to say ugly, I'll be civilised here. But he just breaks down the initial fights on the card, nothing really to note here. So we finally get to the octagon after 15 minutes, and we finally get a fight started. They say that Oishi is part of the Raw Japan team, which makes absolutely no sense because Raw stands for Real American Wrestling. So Oishi is part of Real American Wrestling Japan. Okay then. So the fight starts and Oishi tries a takedown and Clark just throws a knee up in slow motion. Oishi hits Clark's knee with his shoulder. This made no sense and is a bad omen for the rest of the card. Have you seen the video of the Rams that just like charge into each other and it's like a stalemate? They run in, they hit each other, and then they just stand there, look at one another. That is how clunky this looked. Oishi shot in, Clark lifted up his knee to his chest, not in a strike, but as a method of takedown defense. Oishi ran his shoulder into Clark's shin, whilst Clark is balancing on one leg. Oishi then stopped the takedown attempt after making contact, and then just circled and reset. What the fuck did I just watch? Genuinely one of the strangest openings to a fight I've ever seen, and Mike Goldberg says that Oishi trains with Akira Shoji, who he calls one of the top fighters in Japan. We have seen Akira Shoji in Pride, clearly Mike Goldberg has not. And by the way, Oishi is a late replacement for Takase, who somehow keeps getting booked, and he looks tiny, and that's probably why he can't get the takedown on Clark. Jeff Blatnick has to tell us again about how silent the crowd is, and it's purely about respect, and not because there's nobody there. Please guys, trust me, there's people here, I promise. Round 1 is over and nothing happened. By the way, weak shots and trading dominant position in the clinch against the fence. Into round 2, and finally Oishi gets the double leg on Clark, but Clark is able to get back to his feet. And now we stand out of range in the centre and get our breath back. I'm not kidding. Another takedown for Oishi, straight into mount. Clark able to reverse the position. Now Clark is on top in the guard. And then the round ends. Whole lot of nothing. Round 3, Clark throws a 1-2, which misses. So he decides to throw another one, misses and falls over his own feet. What an absolute farce. Oishi with the takedown, Clark reverses the position, now on top in the guard, lands some weak body shots, and you guessed it, Nothing else happened. Who wins? Who cares, really? It was unanimous or a majority, depending on your source. And no, I'm not joking. I couldn't understand the announcer because he was speaking Japanese. I'm being dead serious right now. Goldberg says unanimous. Online sources tell me it was a majority. Who knows? We had 4 judges. Decision for Laverne Clark, who won the third, definitely. Oishi, I thought, took round 2. So they gave round 1 to Clark because I suppose he traded dominant position against defence better than Oishi. Not the best start to the card, safe to say. Let's see if the second fight is any better. Next up, we have Ikuhisa Minowa versus Joe Slick. Now, we've seen Joe Slick win over Jason DeLucia after DeLucia fell and twisted his own knee and the fight got called. Slick stood up and celebrated, of course. What else would you do? But before we get there, we need to hear John Peretti's point of view and his perspective on the fights that he himself made. And, okay, that's fine, a little self-indulgent, but that's okay. Minowa starts the fight by shooting in. He gets his takedown attempt stuffed, and now we've crumpled to the floor in a heap. Slick then tries for the gilly. He can't get it, and now he is on top in the guard. We get back to the feet, and Minowa this time gets the takedown with the inside trip. We stay here until the end of the round. And this, more and more, just seems like a common theme in the sport at this time, where we get the takedown, and even if a guy manages to get back up to the feet, he just gets taken down again, and we just end the round. Like, there could be minutes left on the clock. As soon as we get to guard, fuck it, let's just stay here until the end of the round. Start of the second, and both guys throw a whole lot of punches and land a whole lot of nothing. Slick clinches Minowa against the fence. Minowa gets his back off the cage and gets the throw on Slick. Another takedown. Minowa in the guard. Slick is able to get back up to his feet, and another huge takedown for Minowa. Huge pickup and overhead throw. Very impressive. Very impractical. As Slick lands on top, Slick now willingly puts himself on bottom trying a gilly. I can't believe what I'm seeing. We end the round with Minowa on top in the guard. Just hand Minowa the round. I could not believe it when he'd taken the slam, and it honestly looked as though Minowa gave himself the worst of it. He then willingly put himself on bottom attempting the gilly, never locked in, never even close. Just willingly puts himself on bottom like that and hands Minowa the round. Great work from Joe Slick. So, round 3, Minowa shoots and gets sprawled on. Slick is on top in half guard. He's then able to transition to mount. While in the mount, he's able to land ground and pound, and then willingly leaves the mount to go to side control. What the fuck? Fuck this fight. Fuck Joe Slick. You are a complete idiot. What are you doing? Minowa gets back to the feet because obviously he does. Obviously. Minowa lands a high kick on Joe Slick that cut Slick badly, thoroughly deserved. And I didn't even think that it hit that high when I first seen it. But apparently it did, because Jesus Christ, is he bleeding badly. They then show the replay, and Minowa definitely does catch his shin. It is what it looks like on just around the brow of Slick. I didn't think he got the leg up that high, but apparently he did. And he gets the doctor's stoppage victory. And just as a side note, remember when kicking with shoes on was banned? Just a thought. Pat Miletich, in an interview after the fact, would blame the shoelaces of Minowa for causing the cut. That's what he thinks caused the cut, and he said that Jeremy Horn agreed with him. So, stands to reason that soon enough, shoes and high kicks as a combination will be banned. Thank you, Pat Miletich, for reinstating an actual good rule, to be fair to him. But it is funny that when Pat asks, Pat gets. So we then run some promo for UFC 26, where we have rebooked the main event from UFC 24, which was cancelled, rebooking it for 26. By the way, go fuck yourself, Lake Charles, Louisiana. You are not getting the main event you paid for, because we're going to Cedar Rapids, Iowa for UFC 26, and Pat Miletich is scheduled to defend the lightweight title in his home state. He's in the back talking to Werme about his training partners, fighters tonight, interview bingo, and the shoelace incident that we just spoke about there. Otherwise, nothing really of note. A bit of interview bingo. Ron Waterman's back, and he's taking on Satoshi Honma, who we've seen at Pride 1. He's won one and lost one. Likewise, Ron Waterman. We've seen him. He's won one, he's lost one, he's drawed one. A lot of ones. Waterman gets the takedown in about 30 seconds into the fight. Straight into side mount, Honma turns. Waterman tries to take the back. It just results in ground and pound from the big man. Doesn't finish the fight. Does not finish the fight. We end up in half guard, and Waterman just far too big for Honma. And 2.5 minutes into this fight, it should be called here. It should be called here. Waterman easily could have finished the fight if he'd just thrown stuff. He could have threw everything at that ground and pound there. But instead, it's just slow, it's laboured, sporadic punches. He just let the fight go on. He then tried to land knees on the bottom. By that point, Honma's already gotten his hands in the way. Honma was literally lying there with just hands on his head, defending himself, not moving. If he just spammed punches, the fight would have been over, but he's brain dead, so he didn't, and the fight goes on. Honma, he was genuinely just lying there covering up. He was done. Waterman, again, like many others, dumb as fuck. Honma gets back to the feet somehow. Waterman keeps him pressed against the fence for the rest of the round, and we then go into the second. Waterman shoots, misses, begins crawling on the floor like a dog. Honma just backs up and allows Waterman to catch him anyway. I mean, I've got no answers. He just clinches him against the fence. The fight needs restarted to fix Honma's gloves, which it kind of looked like he was fiddling with before the round started. I don't know if there was some gamesmanship involved there. But then after the restart, Waterman again with a takedown and ground and pound. Honma tries to throw up an armbar, but Waterman escapes. Now into side control, and Waterman stays on top for the rest of the round in the guard, Mark Coleman style, where he keeps the position, but he's not really landing anything crazy. We then get into the third, more of the same. Waterman on top in the guard, 40-pound weight advantage, pretty boring style, favouring control over finishing. Did I mention it's boring? It's like Mark Coleman, right? It's like Mark Coleman without the star power of being Mark Coleman. It's like diet Mark Coleman. It's hammer light is what it is. And this is the last time we're going to see Ron Waterman in the octagon. He will be sadly missed. Oh, and by the way, he won unanimous decision. So that's the first half of the card. All three fights have been pretty dull. Safe to say. Not really the best start to the card, but then again, this is one of the Japanese events, Ultimate Japan. The trilogy has been full of dull fights. Even going back to the very first one, that main event between Maurice Smith and Randy Couture and tournament was a farce. Sakuraba and Silveira go to a no contest in the semi-final, then just fight each other again in the final. It's always been a mess when we've came here to Japan. But then we go to the back here in the modern times, in the current times of 2000, and we have a Eugene Jackson interview. He tells us he has the flu, but when he gets in the cage, there will be no excuses. Jackson has 2 KOs in his first 2 UFC fights, so hopefully he can add some life to this card, which desperately needs it as it's currently going through atrophy. So he's up against Sine Kikuta, who we've seen at Pride 2 go 70 minutes to a loss against Renzo Gracie. Yes, you heard that right. And then a 30-minute draw against Eijiro Matsui. Absolutely chronic. And for a boring card already, this does not sound promising. Kakuta lands a leg kick to start. Spinning back kick half-heartedly. He knows he's out of range, so he just sort of reins it in, pulls it back at the end. Kakuta basically just barrels over Jackson. He chases him around the cage. Jackson's like landing some shots, notably he lands a nice uppercut, but he's just backpedaling, so Kakuta just like keeps running at him and Jackson just topples over. Kakuta is now on top of Jackson. Jackson tries to get back to the feet and Kakuta takes him right back down. He's now into mount, lands some nice ground and pound before using that offense to put on the arm triangle, then transitioning into the armbar. Take notes, everyone. This was a great finish for Kakuta. Nice ground and pound, nice transition between the submissions, and like the arm triangle into the armbar was quick, it was good, but it was the starting with the ground and pound that made it possible. When he got into mount, he initially tried, it looked as though for an arm triangle he was nowhere near the neck, but he then ground and pounded, grounded and pounded, and then the submission opened up. Focus on the ground and pound first, and then the submission opportunity presents itself. Do not start with the sub unless you are very quick into the mount, straight to sub immediately, like Ronda Rousey style. Start with the punches, the sub will present itself, or the ground and pound will just work and win you the fight. So we then run an intermission, only an hour and a half in, by the way. Some would say that's enough time for the full card. Some people who, value their time. But we then run intermission, an hour and a half in, and we just seen the first entertaining fight with a nice finish. So now we're going to kill all that momentum, and now we're talking to Big John. He bigs up Bustamante, who at this point has 5 wins, 1 draw in MMA. That draw was a 40 round. A 40 round, that would have been something. It was 1 round in 40 minutes. He also has a win over Jerry Bolander, which is nice, who we've seen part of the Lions Den and such. I think a tournament winner too. But he has jiu-jitsu credentials as well, all the medals at national championships in Brazil and all the medals at world championships too. He then talks about Tito Ortiz, Vanderlei Silva, the evolution of the MMA athlete, more interview bingo, you can probably guess, giving praise to both guys. You now need more than one style in MMA, yada yada. We now speak to a US Navy rep with the rest of his squad, platoon, whatever the fuck you call the Navy, or a group of Navy people, sailors on a boat maybe. We then get Murillo Bustamante, his debut against Yoji Anjo, who was at Ultimate Japan 1 where he lost to Tank Abbott, and you might be wondering, by the way, what is Tank Abbott doing at the start of the year 2000? Well, he's now a pro wrestler at WCW, the number 2 wrestling company in the world at the time, and he's pulling knives on people. Live on pay-per-view. That's what Tank Abbott is doing right now. Just in case anyone was wondering. It's just a shame that we never got to see any of this in UFC. But back to the action, and Monte with the takedown to start into side mount. Anjo makes it to his feet. Monte still in control, takes him back down into half guard and now into mount. Monte trying for ground and pound because he has a brain. Anjo doing well to block, but he pushes off the fence, and from the bottom, this was a really nice reversal. Anjo pushes off the fence with his feet, is able to reverse the position. He's now on top, and then thinks that it's best probably if he just stands up instead of staying like on top in the guard. It actually reminded me, remember when like Charles Oliveira, this is like modern day UFC, when Charles Oliveira, he might get knocked down or something like that, and he would just lie on his back and beckon someone into the guard, and nobody would want to do it because his jiu-jitsu is so good. This is kind of what it reminded me of. Anjo was just like, you know what, I'll just stand up, I don't really need to be here. But Monte is able to get Anjo back down, and he gets back into the mount relatively easily and lands some soft punches from the mount, and then begins to ramp it up with some heavier strikes with a few seconds to go left in the first round, and time runs out before he can get the finish. Now into the second, and Monte gets another takedown straight into the arm triangle, and Anjo is forced to tap out. The two shake hands and hug after the fight. Bustamante looked really good here. He looked really good. And like, this is only his first fight. And it's sort of the Ebenezer Braga principle of, you come over here, you look really good, and we're never going to fucking see you again. So we'll need to wait a while before we get to see Bustamante, but he will be back. UFC will be under new leadership, but he will be back, and he'll also become a mainstay in Pride in a few years' time, so we have that to look forward to. But Monte has an interview after the fight, and it's another game of interview. Another game of interview bingo, baby. It's our favourite game. Just all the hits, all the big ones, all the good ones. And then we have to hear from John Peretti again because we haven't heard enough from him. And he says that this main event could end up being boring, and boy, that's how I like to promote my fights as well. See, when I'm the matchmaker and I make a main event to sell a pay-per-view, I love coming on halfway through the show saying, you know what, this main event has potential to be really, really boring. Great strategy, just terrific. So we get some nice propaganda for Tito Ortiz, and we just kind of recap his history in the promotion. We even go through the losses to Guy Mezger, and then the redemption against Guy Mezger, and then the loss after that to Frank Shamrock, because that's how we make it to where we are now. And Tito Ortiz, I have to say, in this video package has his name pronounced correctly, this time by the narrator, because you'll remember the previous narrator, or it might have been the same guy, I can't remember, but he used to get called Tito Ortiz in the hype packages before the main event, so that's been corrected. We then get some Vanderlei Silva promo as well. They don't go into any of the Pride stuff, I suppose, because they don't have the rights to it, but that's kind of where he's been making a name for himself, because he's only had 2 UFC fights and he's 1-1, you know. So if you've only seen UFC, particularly live at the time in 2000, you're probably wondering, where is Vitor Belfort? But now it is time for the main event, the middleweight championship. A new champion will be crowned, and either way I'm pretty happy. Not often does this happen where I like both fighters and would be okay with either winning. You know, Frank Shamrock, Tito Ortiz, I liked both guys, but, you know, Bashroot and Randleman, I would rather a Bashroot win, so it kind of swings them right. Sometimes we get a Pat Miletich title fight where I don't really like either guy, and I don't care who wins for all the wrong reasons. But this time, for the middleweight title, I'm happy either way. And in the first minute, Tito gets the takedown. He's into guard, landing some short strikes, but mainly just holding control, which we don't like to see, but this is what happened at the start of the Shamrock and Tito fight at 22, and that turned into a classic, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Into the second, and the rotten camera work here means that you miss what I thought at the time was a potential knockdown from Tito Ortiz. Absolutely raging at this. The camera work was just so bad, because we're so far away, we can't see, and then we come in way too close just to see Vanderlei Silva falling over, but you can't tell if he just tripped over his own feet or a knockdown happened. I fucking hate this company. Commentators freak out like it was a crazy knockdown, but as we know, they freak out for anything. Jens Pulver at the last event, some guy threw a high kick, he caught it, didn't even land, and Mike Goldberg's going, ow, like he's Joe Rogan. It makes no sense. So I don't know what to believe. Vanderlei's still with it, and we end up on the mat. Tito on top, of course, in guard halfway through the round, and I didn't even notice until now, Tito's back in the shoes. Back in the Asics. Against Frank, he never had the shoes on, but nobody's ever actually went for the Art Jemerson boxing glove style, like one on, one off. Nobody ever tried the one shoe on, one shoe off. That would have been interesting. Tito closes out the round on top in a guard. He's up 2-0, and then he was up 2-0 against Frank Shamrock, though, remember? And they show a replay of that shot. Definitely was a knockdown on Vanderlei, so that knockdown for Tito definitely takes the round, as though there was any doubt. Into the third, and Tito attempts a takedown, stuffed by Vanderlei, who cannot hold on to the clinch, which is clearly the best part of Vanderlei's game, is clinch work. And the camera work, by the way, so bad. You're missing all the action. I hate this company. Again, please, can we just hold on to a shot for 10 seconds? Because the fucking camera guy is moving with the camera. He's not on the box like he's supposed to be. So part of the cage that's padded, the vertical post with a pad on it that keeps the cage up, he's standing behind that. It sounds as though Tito Ortiz gets dropped. I'm not kidding. There have been 2 knockdowns and the production is so incompetent they missed both of them. It sounded as though Tito dropped to a knee. I can't believe I'm resigned to having to listen for knockdowns like I'm a blind guy. But I think he got dropped to a knee based on the sound and the point where he starts running from Vanderlei. It seems by his reaction he started low, which makes me think he got dropped to a knee. But fuck the camera guy. Why are you not in position? Fuck the production truck who can see he's not in position and still went to that camera anyway and missed the knockdown again. What an absolute joke of a company. Tito on top in the guard to end the round, 2-1 for Tito. They show the replay where you see the shot that dropped Tito. He definitely did fall to a knee. And you can actually see the cameraman jump off the stool and miss the shot. But how can we see the knockdown and all the preceding and subsequent action from this camera, but we don't pick this shot during the fight where we can see everything, we can see all the action, and we don't need to jump to different shots to then play catch up on the action? I wonder why this company's going bankrupt. Into the 4th, we don't really do a lot to start. And then after a couple of minutes, Vanderlei swings and misses. Tito shoots, gets another takedown into guard. More short strikes. Jeff Blatnick says, the pace has slowed. Did it ever speed up? And he also says both styles have become conservative. What were they before they became this? This is all it has been, to be honest. Those knockdowns are so, like, against the run of play, to use a term for another sport. Like, there are moments that don't really represent the flow of this fight. So it's another round for Tito Ortiz as he just stayed in the guard the entire time. In terms of effectiveness of this strategy, look, it works, right? Tito is certainly winning. This is boring as fuck though, and I call it out for everyone else, so I need to call it out for Tito. But Vanderlei hasn't been able to implement any of his Muay Thai. It's been mostly Tito, mostly groundwork. 5th and final round, Tito gets another takedown into side control, and you guessed it, Tito holds on to top position for the entire round, wins the round, and wins the fight by unanimous decision. He beats Vanderlei Silva and wins the UFC Middleweight Championship through unscrupulous methods. He has a nice interview in the octagon where he thanks everyone he can think of, and then he has an interview in the back with Werme, and he shouts out Huntington Beach and his soon-to-be wife. So, congrats to Tito Ortiz. We then promo UFC 26, run through the highlights of the evening, Domo Arigato and Sayonara, which brings UFC 25 to a close. So a mixed bag. As these events tend to be. Let's start positively. Bustamante looked really good. Really good. Dominant win. It's just a shame that we won't get to see him again for a while. But we're being positive here. Bustamante looked really good, and so did Sine Kikuta. He looked good also, and if he hadn't looked bad in the previous fights, I'm looking at the 70 minutes against Enzo Gracie, I'm looking at the half an hour against Eijiro Matsui, then maybe I would be more optimistic about Kikuta, but in a vacuum, this performance here tonight, then he looked good too. So, nice. This was a quick win, always gets more bonus points from me. Nice sub. Really good finishing sequence as well, actually. Shout out, because going from the ground and pound, then transitioning to the arm triangle, then transitioning to the arm bar, liquid stuff. It was great. Loved it. But the start of the card, this is where we get to the midsection of the compliment sandwich, and I don't even know if there's going to be another layer of bread. We're just starting off with the good stuff, then delving into the muck. The start of this card was unbelievably dull. Boring for the first 3 fights, nothing really to add to that, just boring as fuck. At least Minoa got a finish, but it was doctor stoppage, but beggars can't really be choosers. And I'm just happy for a finish. Waterman could have ended the fight and chose not to. Thankfully, he won't be seen in UFC again. But I would be so much more up on this card had Waterman just finished that fight and we didn't have to watch another 2 rounds of just relative nothing. Laverne Clark won via apparently luck, because that first round even in that fight, he probably edged it, but it wasn't like so clear and obvious. And that was a boring fight too. But I was most disappointed in the main event. I thought Vanderlei would have been able to stuff more takedowns than he did, and then be able to use his knees in the clinch to be able to then take the fight to Tito. But from Tito, we expected him to be grappling heavy. That is where his advantages lie, but I didn't expect it to be this easy for him. And even despite getting knocked down, it was relatively easy for him. I didn't even mention the "I killed the axe murderer" shirt. That was a nice touch. I will give credit where it was due. That was very funny, and it looked as though it was like a last minute job as well, because it looked like it was just like red Sharpie, so extra points for that. But a poor main event given the expectations. Let me know, where does this trilogy rank? The Ultimate Japan Trilogy, where does that rank amongst the all-time greats? Star Wars, Back to the Future, Godfather, Toy Story, Lord of the Rings. It's got to be up there, is it not? For me, this was a dull card. Before I forget, production note, commentary was actually fine, but the camera work was shit. A couple of standout performances though. Again, shouts out to Kakuta and Bustamante, who sadly won't be on our next card, UFC 26 at Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We return to the city of 5 seasons for Randleman versus Hizzo, Miletic versus Alessio, and Jens Pulver debuts a new weight division in UFC for the 155ers. They call it bantamweight at this time. So look, we know what happens when we bring in these lighter guys. Absolute guaranteed decision pending. Like, you already know this thing's going the full 15 minutes. But that's for next time. We have a trip to Pride next for the finals of the Grand Prix, where Mark Coleman resurrects his career and Sakuraba wages a war on terror. Join me for that review. Hit like, hit subscribe, hit the notify bell, and comment your own thoughts below. Share with a friend, and I will see you all next time.